Test, 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 test. Good. It's in the middle. Nice and close.
No, right.
Oh, don't do that. Actually, I didn't. I don't think I've worn deodorant all week. Yeah. Dan, have you worn deodorant all week? I haven't.
Good.
I changed my underwear though.
That's good. That's a
big plus.
step in the right direction.
Yeah.
As long as you say it, bro. No, when you ain't gotta say
The
it, bro.
Vanderbilt University.
No, when you ain't gotta say it, bro. It's coming.
The Butte Junior College, Northern California.
You can do that one, though. That's more people. Yeah.
Do we need to pull up? Oh, they got two chairs. Okay, that's great. And Coach, it's up to you if you want to use that mic or if you want to use the podium. It's totally up to you.
Wherever you want me.
Whatever's more comfortable for you.
Getting friendly in here. Nice and close.
I'm ready. Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the second annual NFLPA Collegiate Bowl. My name is George Atala. I work with the NFL Players Association. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our annual Collegiate Bowl, like I said, and we're hosting our press conference today, joined by Coach Dick Vermeil, who won the game last year, and Coach Herm Edwards, along with three members of their teams. Just a quick background before I introduce each of them, and welcome to those of you joining us on YouTube. We're live streaming this as well. We decided as an organization to engage in this event to make sure that future NFL players had the comprehensive professional football experience. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean only the top-rated facilities from a football standpoint, top coaching staffs, which you can look at and review in the media guide in front of you, Hall of Famers and future Hall of Famers coaching them, but it also means providing them with a real experience of what their NFL careers are going to look like. It's going to be the first opportunity they get to not only hear about defensive schemes in the locker room, but also how to prepare themselves financially for life in the National Football League. It gives them an opportunity not only to understand how they can market themselves as individuals on the field, but what type of promotional activities and group licensing rights the NFLPA offers them off the field. Needless to say, we've put together a week-long experience for them that provides them with top-rated not only coaching staff and scouts and football facilities, but I know that they are in really good hands with our staff and with professionals in every level of the life that they're going to experience as an NFL player. I'm now going to turn it over to Coach Dick Vermeil, who needs very little introduction. This is his second year coaching this game. Of course, he's a Super Bowl winning head coach in the National Football League with the St. Louis Rams. And I'll invite him to make a few remarks, and then he'll turn it over to Coach Edwards, who will speak as well. One thing I didn't mention, and I'll do that now. Representing the American team today, quarterback Jordan Rogers from Vanderbilt. Of course, he has the distinction of being Aaron's younger brother, but he has also established a career of his own in college and has put together one of the finest seasons of a Vanderbilt quarterback ever. Also, directly to my right is Brad Sorensen, quarterback from Southern Utah. He was recently a finalist for the Walter Payton Award for Most Outstanding Player in Division I football subdivision. Also, safety from Ohio State, Orion Johnson. Had to have somebody from Ohio State here today. He's recorded 39 tackles and played all 12 games during their 2012 undefeated season. From the national team, quarterback Dane Christ from Kansas is here with us today. He was one of the captains of the Kansas Jayhawks and has really shined at his position for the Kansas Jayhawks, and we're really welcoming him today. Running back from Miami, Mike James, started all 12 games, played some special teams and fullback during his senior campaign, a 4-year letterman, and really a standout player at the U. Bruce Taylor from Virginia Tech, a linebacker from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He was honorable mention All-ACC and a coach's All-ACC selection. So not only will you get a chance to talk to the head coaches, but meet some of the players that are standing out this week. So, Coach Vermeil, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First off, it's a real pleasure for me to represent the national team, second opportunity, but even more exciting because Herman Edwards is involved in this. I first started getting after this guy when he was 17 years old. That shows you how old I am.
We're both old, Coach.
Yeah. But anyway, I was able to bring Herman Edwards into the National Football League in 1977, and he did an unbelievable job as an undrafted free agent and played for me. And I tell people this all the time. I've never had a corner that played a position that worked harder at improving his skills on a daily basis than Herman Edwards, and that's why he was a fine coach, and that's why he's doing an outstanding job right now as a broadcaster. But to being with these guys, I'd say the whole scheme of things this year is smoother. The National Football League Players Association has just improved everything through the experience of putting their first game together last year, and now this game. Everything's smoother. The athletes are bigger, faster, and stronger than last year's group for both sides, from what I understand. I was hoping it was only going to be on our side, but I couldn't get that arranged. But it's really been fun. Selfishly, why do I do this? So I can sit next to Herman Edwards. So I can bring a coaching staff together, coaches that coach for me, players that played for me. Hall of Fame guys, all pros, and just wonderful human beings that when you're out of coaching, that's what you miss the most. The relationships that you build when you're working with these people in intense environments and situations, both coaches and players. So selfishly, that's why I'm here. Second, I'm here to try to help kids. And I don't spend a lot of time talking to the players. I've turned that responsibility over to the Isaac Brucers, the Will Shields, the Eric Hickses, and the guys that have played the game a number of years, Priest Holmes. I think it's very important that they hear these guys talk, the Ray Crockett's, and hear their story and how they made it, and why they made it, and what they've done, and what to do after football, and how to handle success, how to handle letdowns, how to handle when your career's all over. Better expressed by a former player than an old coach. So, and be able to sit next to these guys, you don't get to know them like you do when you're really coaching them double days in training camp and all that, and you've had them in mini camps, but it's really been a lot of fun. Really, it's amazing how much these kids can absorb in 4 days of practice. We put a mini camp offense in. Okay, the defense is extremely limited, but we took a mini camp routine. So when these kids go to a mini camp now, they will have been through an installation very similar to a mini camp. Again, educating them and getting prepared, just like the Players Association wants us to do. But thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I'll turn it over to Herman.
Thank you, Coach. And I echo what Coach Vermeil says in this sense. Obviously, being involved in the National Football League for over 30 years as a player and as a coach, and I go way back with Coach Vermeil. Our days on the recruiting road when he was trying to get me to go to UCLA, and I ended up going to Cal, and we ended up being together in Philadelphia for a long time. And a lot of my philosophy that I've gained as a coach as well as a player through this man right here. And he was a player's coach, no doubt about it. I think when you think about the NFLPA game, this is my first year being associated with it. I'm glad they invited me for the opportunity. And it's really, this game is not about so much the former players, Coach Vermeil or myself. It's about these young players. This is the future of the National Football League. A lot of these players will be drafted, some of them won't be, doesn't matter. But I think what they have to realize, and I've talked to my team about it, and Dick has talked to his team, in life we're a collection of choices. And the choices you make not only on the field but off the field are very important. And I think the skills and the things, the information they're about to learn here this week will prepare them for that. Not only because former players are coaching them, but what the NFLPA has done off the field for them, providing them information so they have an opportunity to make a choice. And when you make the correct choices, you have a better chance of being successful. So this game is set up, not so much about the game, but the information they have to have so they can have some success as a football player, not only on the field, but more importantly anymore, off the field. And that's the issue we always deal with former players. You always hear sad stories about former players, and the first thing a lot of them say was, I didn't know. Well, these kids are going to know, and I think that's very important. And then from there, they can make a choice. There's consequences with choices, and I think we all understand that. The game is about highlighting the players and putting them in the position where they can have some success, feel good about themselves. I told them very simply was this, when it comes to pro football, not a hobby. Pro football is not a hobby. It's your occupation. Pro football players don't graduate. You have to take someone's job. It becomes a job. And, and when you choose to do this, you have to prepare. And it's not, Monday through Sunday. It's every day. You're a pro football player. That is your occupation. All right? And they have to understand that. It's a tough occupation. And if you're willing to sacrifice some things, it's like the old story. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. No one wants to make that sacrifice. Well, it takes sacrifice to be a professional football player, a professional coach. Everyone in life has the same amount of time every day. We always choose what we want to do with our time. If you want to make this truly a profession, and Coach said it, there's work. Hard work is never left. You got to work at this. It doesn't matter about your talent. God gives you your talent. Are you willing to work? And if you're willing to work, you'll get an opportunity. I told our team this. If you think that life is fair, life's not fair. Not supposed to be fair. It has never been fair. Life's about opportunity. And in the National Football League, if you're a good player, you'll get an opportunity. I was a free agent. This man right here gave me an opportunity. He gave me an opportunity, and I took advantage of it. I prepared myself. These young men will have enough information when they leave here this week. They've been coached by former players. Experience is great to have, but the problem with experience is this. You get the lesson first, and the experience comes after the lesson. Well, they're fortunate. They're going to get a lot of experience from professional football players that have played in this league, knowledge you can't buy. And they're being coached by these guys every day. If they use that to their advantage, they'll have an opportunity to have some success. So thanks again for the NFLPA for inviting me. I appreciate it. Good to see my old coach here again. And it'll be a fun game.
You're just buttering him up.
No, I ain't buttering him up. No, he's the best. This guy's the best. You can open it up, whatever you want.
Yeah, we'll take some questions from the audience. And again, I want to make sure that the players have an opportunity to share their thoughts too. So any questions, you can direct them at anybody up here, and hopefully the players will have a chance to talk to. Questions? Okay, I'm going to ask the first question. I want to ask Orion, for you this week, how's it been being coached by your position coaches, guys that have been successful in the league? Tell me a little bit about what that's been like for you. I assume, give us an opportunity to hear from you who have been the coaches on your team, your position, and what type of lessons have you learned from them? Any mic you want.
I actually had the privilege to work with Darryl Green and Robert Griffith, definitely at the safety position and the cornerback position. And it's really been a blessing. We have a guy with Darryl Green who actually got to go and play in the league for 20 years. And that knowledge that he has, is pretty much priceless. And, with Coach Griff, he's been out there definitely helping me out at the safety position and giving me all that advice. And, they've just been giving it to us from a player and a coaching standpoint and kind of helping us out and tweak everything for the most part that they can for the 4 days that we got. But it's been a great experience from the whole coaching staff and on both sides, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Doug?
For both coaches, this gives you an opportunity to kind of scratch that itch. Is it hard to walk away from it again and go back, or can you walk away from something like this going,
Well, it's a good question. The question, if you didn't hear it, is that when you come and do something like this, as Herman and I are doing, is it hard to walk away from it because you've been coaching, you've been part of a game all your life? Herman has the advantage that he's talking about the game all the time, and he has to study it to prepare to present it on national television. I follow the game closely. I follow closely the players that I've coached that are still playing, like Tony Gonzalez at Atlanta and other kids. And I follow coaches that I have coached with and have worked for me that are on other teams. So I stay close to it. But nothing can substitute being on the field. Nothing can take the place of being next to these guys and these guys. And people ask me all the time, do you miss it? You're darn right I miss it. I don't miss the bad days, you know. I don't miss getting beat by Herman in New York and getting on a plane at midnight and flying back to Kansas City and getting off the airport, off the plane at 4 in the morning and going right to work. I don't miss that. But overall, I miss it a lot. You know, it's part of your life, and I think Herm feels the same way.
Yeah, to echo what Coach Vermeil is saying, obviously you miss the camaraderie with the coaches, planning. You miss the players, developing players, the communication. But I've been very fortunate. I've been in the league for 30 years. The last 3 or 4 years now I've been on ESPN. So I'm still a part of the game. I have to study it. I get to talk about it. I receive calls all the time. Coach, you want to come back? My answer is real simple. Got the wrong number. I have the best job in America. Never lost a game anymore. I'm a smarter coach, too. So, you know, I'm involved in this game. I coached the Under Armour All-American game for the last 2 years. That's a unique experience, too, dealing with young people. So I still have a platform. But for me, I have 2 young girls, 6 and 7 years old. I've coached a lot of players, and you think players are tough? I got 2 daughters. They're really tough. I'm just trying to figure that out, the dynamics of that.
follow-up question. It seems that quarterbacks are coming out of college more advanced, more in tune with what the NFL requires. Is that something you're noticing?
The question about the caliber and the quality of quarterbacks coming out of college today. First off, if you watch the college game critically, you'll find out the college coaches are doing an unbelievable job of coaching football, and especially on the offensive side. And it's unusual if you see an old base offense anymore. When we were coming here, we were worried if the quarterback ever took a snap under center. Okay, because all these variations of shotgun and rifle and pistol and all these other things, the quarterbacks are throwing the ball more game day, meaning they throw the ball more in the off season, in training camps, and in practice. So therefore, they show up to an NFL training camp better prepared. The other thing you've noticed now, in the old days, if you had a quarterback that could run, he couldn't throw real well. Or if you had one that could really throw, he couldn't run very well. Well, today, a number of the kids coming out can do both extremely well, and I mean, I wouldn't want to be a defensive coordinator anymore. You know, they're going to be fired at a very rapid pace, okay, because of the skill.
Dick makes a good point, and I'll echo this. It's kind of funny. Young quarterbacks, they run. Haven't seen too many old quarterbacks run, and they learn to stop running eventually. Because if they want to truly have a career, they have to play within the framework of the pocket. Because this league is about punishing the quarterback. And when you expose him, a couple things happen. Coach didn't know this. There's a red phone behind the desk when you play games. There's a red phone behind everyone's bench. That belongs to the owner. And you keep running that quarterback on that option, and he keeps getting hit, because the defense is going to study this option. Trust me, they're going to study it. They're going to go hit the quarterback. The red phone will ring. The owner says, you know, that guy makes $15 million. He happens to be our franchise quarterback. Can we please stop running that play? So we all like it right now. It's a lot of fun. You know, it's like the hunter. You know, it's fun when you're shooting a rabbit. It's no fun when a rabbit get the gun. And the problem is with the quarterback. You know, you only dress 2. You only dress 2. All right. And when the first one goes down, you're holding your breath when the second one comes in there now, because that's how it works in this league. And so I just think it's evolving. Dick is right. I think these young quarterbacks now, from Pop Warner to high school, they're put in a position where they're in front of people. They throw the ball a lot. The crowd doesn't bother them. The level of competition doesn't bother them. I think coaches in the National Football League have understood that all of a sudden it's not so much about my system anymore. It's about how can I fit this quarterback in my system and how can I develop my system around the player. And I think more coaches are doing that. It's a quarterback-driven league. They have an advantage. They play in the pocket. Rules say now you only can hit guys down the field a certain yardage. You can't hardly tackle guys anymore. You can't hit the quarterback. It's not that the quarterbacks aren't tough, but we're trying to protect the product because people want to see points. You know, you throw in the league to score and you run to win. And no fan wants defense until you're winning the game in the last 2 minutes. Then all the fans stand up and say, defense, defense. But for the first 58 minutes, you want to see points. It's that last 2 minutes when you want your defense to play. We get all that. But I just think that's what this thing has evolved to. Think about last week in the playoffs. First time historically that if you didn't score 30 points, you couldn't win a playoff game. Think about that. And I've been in football a long time. Coach Vermeil's been there too. I mean, if you didn't score 30, you weren't winning last week. And it didn't matter the weather conditions. It didn't matter if you're in the dome. It didn't matter if it was a young quarterback, a veteran quarterback. But this is what the league is evolving in. It's basketball on a grass field. They spread you out anymore. They get the matchups they want. They throw the ball outside, and they wait to see if you can tackle him. And if you can't tackle a guy, it's not a 5-yard play anymore. It's a 20-yard play. And when you have an athletic quarterback, if you don't spy the guy, you got problems. He's going to take off and run. That's what the league's about. So we're dealing with that.
Well, let me ask Dane from the national team to echo that a little bit on the quarterback issue. What have you picked up during your time at Kansas to help prepare you for eventually the biggest job interview you're going to have here in a couple weeks? And what things have you picked up from the coaching staff this week about how to run a pro offense?
Well, I think I've been very fortunate in the quarterback tutelage that I've had in my career thus far. Being coached by Coach Weiss at Kansas, I try to be a sponge and soak up everything that he had to offer and say. And just this week, I mean, working with Coach Vermeil and Coach Terry Shea, I consider myself to be very fortunate to just get whatever insight they can give, from a schematic standpoint to fundamentals to off the field preparation. I've seen, I just said it once, but I've truly tried to be a sponge and just soak up any and all experience and wisdom that these guys have. And I love playing the position of quarterback. I hope to keep playing for as long as I can, but I understand that it ends for everybody. And I just want to continue to compete and keep playing for as long as possible.
And you got a question. Go ahead.
So for Brad, coming from a smaller school being a bigger fish in a smaller pond, why choose to participate in this game, and what are you personally looking to get out of it?
Just what everybody else has said. I mean, to be around professionals, coaches, and players, to learn all I can from them. This is a great experience for me to play with these players, the great athletes we're going against on defense. And it's just been a fun experience so far.
Is there anything in particular that you want to sort of walk away from this with? Obviously, opportunities are number one, but is there anything you're trying to throw upon as a football player?
Sure. I mean, I came here to try and get better at everything, from the quarterback standpoint, as far as fundamentals and just a knowledge of the game. And I feel like I've been able to take away a lot from the practices we had, and just to continue to grow as a quarterback.
Let me help you with this. So we have to understand this, ladies and gentlemen. These young people come from different programs. First of all, offensively, terminology different. Defensive, terminology different. Fundamentals and techniques. And that's where the rub lies for these guys, because they've been coached for 4 years, hopefully by one coach in one program. And then they leave that program, and they have to go to the National Football League. And what they're feeling this week is the volume of things they got to learn. They're smart, they're athletic, but as we know, the more volume and the more information you have to process, you can't play fast. You got to be able to think, especially at the quarterback position. It's about processing information and knowing where to go with the football, making a quick decision. You drop back, by your second step, third step, the ball's gone. You know exactly what you're looking at. Well, the problem they're going to run into, whether it's offense or defense, at the next level, there's so much information. You go from being a 22-year-old playing against a 30-year-old man with experience. Well, you can't get that the first day in training camp. We're giving them a little bit of what's about to happen to them so they won't be shocked. I came out of college and thought I knew how to play football, and then I go to this man's camp, and for like 2 months, I was like, whoa, this is really hard. This is really hard. And it was only 14 preseason games then. 14 regular season games. There were 6 preseason games. We were in camp for 2 months with this man. Now, 125 players. 125 players. Coach ran 10 of them off the first day, just in the conditioning. He ran them off. And rightly so, because it wasn't a hobby anymore. It was a profession. But you understood this. When you made Dick Vermeil's football team, you were worthy. You were worthy. You went through the test. He made sure you were mentally tough, physically tough, because in football, you have to earn the coach's trust. That's what it's about. Can the coach trust you? And if you play quarterback, that whole organization is trusting you. Every decision you make as a quarterback, whether it's in college, but more so in the National Football League, a lot of people are relying on you to do the right thing with the ball because you play with the ball. No matter what anybody says, the quarterback dictates the terms. He plays with the football. And how you play basically sets the tone of how the game will be played out. That's important. So these guys got a lot of pressure on them, quarterback. It's just, that's part of it. And it's hard. And that's why these young quarterbacks that are coming in, you marvel at them because you go, wow, these guys are really special players.
Let me ask on the defensive side of the ball, Bruce, you went up against some great offensive teams in the ACC. Can you talk a little bit about being on the other side of the ball and trying to defend some of the new offenses and how you deal with that as a linebacker, and what defensive capabilities have you learned this week to try and prepare yourself for being a linebacker in the NFL?
Just kind of saying what Coach Herman was saying earlier. The league's evolving. You got to hit guys a certain way. They want to protect the offensive guys. So as a defensive player, kind of makes it harder, to go out there every week and game plan against people because your game plan has to adjust to the changing game. But at the same time, with the changing game, it still makes it fun because you have to develop new schemes and new way to defend people. And this just going into this week, I've played in a few different All-Star games, been blessed to be able to do that. And just going in and trying to learn the different schemes that the coaches are teaching you. Because when you come from a college, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be different scheme, different techniques that the coach is going to teach you. And it's going from doing something for 5 years, learning a specific technique, a specific, scheme for 5 years to going and learning something different. And you only got 4 days to put it in. So, as a defensive player, you want to just be able to be coachable and be able to adjust to the changing game and to the new schemes and soak it in as fast as possible. And I think that's where that's where you find the good players, those guys that can adjust and are coachable.
Go ahead.
In keeping with this concept of the transformation of the game, development of the quarterback, we've also kind of seen a fading of the fullback position, as we've seen here even with the representation of players. I'm curious what you two coaches think is the reason for that and whether or not we'll ever see a resurgence of the position.
Well, first off, the fullback position has disappeared in college, really. So if it disappears in college, it's hard to find one in the National Football League. On my Super Bowl team, our fullback was a linebacker in college, had never played fullback. And he became a starter in 1 year and did a wonderful job. One of our linebackers that's on our squad has already told me that pro scouts have talked to him about adjusting and become not a linebacker in college, a fullback in pro football, looking for that specific 6'2", 255, 260 guy that's been hitting people from the other side, now turn around and become an offensive player. But it is hard to find that guy. It really is. And in it being hard to find that guy, it also dictates what kind of offense you run. If you don't have one, if you can't find one, then you're not building a scheme that really incorporates the use of that second back, that big fullback in the backfield. You're doing a variety of things. Now, Michael right here, we're going to play him at both positions because we only had one fullback coming here. Michael's already out at Penn State. Coming out of college to come to the All-Star game. And he's smart enough to handle both positions and can do it and do it well. But I think Herman recognized the same thing.
Yeah, you make a good point, and you're right. The fullback offense is really used to be traditional when I was in the league. Now, not so much. Obviously, and it comes to this too, roster spots. You only can dress 46 players in the National Football League. So how do you justify a guy that basically is going to play maybe not even a third of your offense? He's going to play some special teams, but now you've got to sit a skilled player down because of a fullback. So I just think it's a unique position. You always seem to need one when you're down inside the 5-yard line, right? But you don't have the guy. But it's a spread open offense anymore. I mean, everything's spread open. Who's your back? You look at Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson would prefer to be a one-back set, but Minnesota did a great job with a fullback. Their fullback made the Pro Bowl, right? So Adrian learned how to run with a fullback. But you look at San Francisco. San Francisco's a little bit traditional. Why? Because the coach. Coach came from Michigan. He's, I always think about him as we look at San Francisco, and I always say he's a run coach. As dynamic as that offense is, he's a run coach. He's going to create formations, and he's going to do it with personnel groups, and he's going to run the ball. He's going to run the power. He's running the power. You're getting the power. You're going to get from different formations, different personnel groups, and so that's what's so unique about San Francisco. And now they got a quarterback that runs it. So they're a run team. But people say, well, San Francisco's a run team. Now they score points, but they dictate the terms because they run the football. They're a power running team. But here again, that's now you look at other teams, they don't have a fullback. It's just you got to ask yourself this question. If you have Tom Brady, do you want a fullback? Nope. You don't want a fullback. Why? What are you using for? I mean, Tom Brady, you going to take 5 snaps away from Tom Brady? No. Why would you do that? So that has a lot to do with it, too, I think. Who's the quarterback? You look at the teams, how teams are built. They're built a couple ways. If you have an elite quarterback, you're probably not going to have an elite runner because you can't play both. You can't pay both positions. You just can't do it anymore. The salaries will dictate that. If you got an elite quarterback, you better have a left tackle because you're going to spread people out. You don't pay the $20 million quarterback to do this, turn around and get the ball to the runner. You don't pay him for that. You pay him to throw the ball down the field. So the more weapons he can have, the better. Now, there'll be situations where you need a guy, but like Coach said, if you have a linebacker that's a pretty athletic guy, you can always flip him over there for 5 plays at fullback. You can do that. So that's what the league is evolving to, in my opinion.
Question?
Question for Jordan, kind of a two-part question. How valuable is this for you to get a chance to meet and talk with some of the scouts here, and sort of your mindset going into the game tomorrow, what you hope to show those scouts that are in the crowd watching?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, when I got invited, the first thought I had was, I get to go compete. And anytime you get a chance to compete with some of the best guys, best players in college football, in front of scouts, you can't ask for a better environment to showcase your skills and really to get coaching from guys that have been in the league for 30+ years. So I really wanted to get out of this game, a chance to compete, show scouts I want to compete, and then pick up some of the verbiage and some of the ins and outs of the offenses, how the NFL teaches it, how they what language they're speaking, how they're calling their protections, how they're calling their concepts, stuff like that to kind of get your foot in the door and give you a head start, into the possibility of getting into a training camp.
Now that actually sitting down and talking with some of the scouts, what's kind of that interview process like when you're trying to convey that?
Yeah, I mean, it's monotonous. You're getting a lot of the same questions over and over again, but you get really good at answering them.
I got one. How does it feel to be an Aaron Rodgers' brother?
Yeah. Never answered that actually before, but we play to win the game. So what I'm going to do when
that's a great one, but don't forget the jingle. Hello comes first.
now you really want to sit down with those scouts and really just kind of be yourself. You want them to get a grasp of who you are off the field, what your background is. You want to be completely honest because they know the things that maybe you're trying to skip around or you might want to leave out. They know those things, so you want to be completely honest. You want to be yourself. Give them a sense of who you are, your character, your background, because they know the football stuff. They're going to watch the film. They want to get to know who you are off the field, the kind of guy you're going to be in the locker room. So just striving to be yourself, be honest with every question.
Time for one more question, then I'll close.
What has been you guys' journey through all this? Kind of like the process for how you wake up, you train, you eat, sleep. Just after your last game of college, what was your journey?
Let's let Mike take that one first, because the question was, how's your journey been like after college, and what type of process are you going through?
I mean, it's definitely been a new journey. I mean, something that's very different. I mean, when you graduate college, like I did in December, I mean, it's a big step. Now you got to start your life as as a man, you got to manage yourself and be the CEO of your own company and really understand what's the next step. So, I mean, the next step for me was, just getting my close circle together, which was my family, and really understanding what I needed to do next and what I really wanted to do next, or play football or go get a job. And, of course, I picked to play football. So, that required me to get an agent, to really find out the ins and outs of the business, to get around, to get into a game like this and get around great coaches like Herm Edwards and Dick Vermeil and really get the understanding of what's going to happen next. And from then on, I started working out at Bomberino Performances in Aventura, Florida, and starting to get ready for the combine and, that process. And, even with meeting with scouts and really getting ready for, like everyone's saying, the biggest interview of your life is some pressure on you, because you really got to, make sure, throughout the things you did in life, you got to really look back on them and be like, hey, I'm going to make sure I did all the right things to get where I'm at. So, I mean, it's definitely been a new challenge. It's been good and it's been fun, but process has been, what it is. You get an agent, go to the combine, go to all-star games and try to get a job.
Well, I want to close by saying two things. First of all, thanks to the coaches and players for joining us today. We've had a tremendous week, and I hope everybody will tune in if you're not going to be here in person tomorrow for the second NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, which will be broadcast live on ESPN2. Thanks to ESPN for their partnership with us. It's been a tremendous week. We do this event, again, to make sure that we not only find future NFL stars, but we identify future leaders as men, as businessmen in the business of football. And I want to bring to your attention one example of that. I think he's still in the room, is Richard Crawford here. Richard Crawford of the Washington Redskins was part of this game last year, made the opening day roster, and was part of their impressive playoff run this year. He had a really important special teams return, if you remember, in their comeback against the Ravens. And I just want to thank him for being here, because he's the type of example not only of what this game is about for players on the field, but what type of leaders in preparation we want to have as people off the field. So I wanted to make sure I recognized Richard, who's here with us today, and I wish the players the best of luck and coaching staffs the best of luck tomorrow. Be safe, good luck, and thanks for joining us. Thank you very much, everybody. Excellent. Thank you very much. That's great.
Hey, y'all too, bro. Hey, bro.
We're going to start our panels in about 5 minutes, but why don't we start bringing the first group up, the bowling panel.
Yeah, it'll make it. We're going to start our BWB first panel here in 2 minutes, so if you can please take your seats and we'll get started in 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're about to get started. If you're on the American or national teams, I think your buses are about to roll out. You don't want to be late for that lunch. All right. You're going to introduce the panelists, right? Okay. We're going to transition from our press conference into BWB Los Angeles. It's a really exciting opportunity for us to have worked with Blogs with Balls now for a bunch of times. I know the first time I was invited to be a part of it, and the Players Association was invited to be a part of it, was the one we had in New York City at the Bloomberg offices. From that point on, I really understood the power and the ability of us to reach out directly to not only sports fans, but people that are writing about it in a way that is a little more non-traditional, if you will. And it's given me an opportunity to meet some fantastic people and engage with outlets that I normally would not have had the opportunity to do so. And I know, Don Povey and I have spoken a lot about our mutual interests. Today we're excited to have a bunch of really interesting panels and panelists. And to do it in Los Angeles, a place that we haven't done anything really with and a place that BWB hasn't done much with. So with that, I want to introduce my good friend and the head of or chair of BWB. I don't even know if you have a title for it. Titles, right? Take it from somebody that has the longest one in the history of the world. Don Povia, thank you.
Thanks, George. As George says, we've had a really nice working experience with the NFL Players Association and George specifically and his team. And it's really a pleasure to be here and be a part of this event. As he said, the way that the Players Association has embraced new media, our organization, and really made inroads at our events with online influencers, if you will, has been refreshing. It's really been a great relationship, and we're proud to be here. So with that said, we're going to bring up our first panel about the state of, I guess you would say, the BCS bowl system, postseason games like this. Kyle Bunch, my partner, is going to moderate this panel, and they can introduce themselves. We are live streaming. Come on in, sit down, and listen to the panel. Certainly participate. We're going to ask it when you do ask a question that the panelist or the moderator repeats it so we could hear it on the stream. But without further ado, let me introduce Kyle.
You guys all want to come on up and just do it all at once. I'll go ahead and take this lovely standing podium. So thank you. Like Don said, thanks everybody for coming out. We're going to get things started today by talking about probably, hopefully not an enormously controversial topic, which is all the ways that we would love to see postseason college football improve. I think we're coming off of a particularly rough bowl season with not nearly as much in the way of. Oh, you can't hear? Oh, here, I will make this louder. So we're going to talk about, college football postseason, ways that we can improve or we would like to see improvements, and kind of what those shortcomings in the current system are costing players, schools, to line the pockets of a few. So with all that intro being said, I'm going to go down the line here and just ask all of our panelists to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their background, and then we'll dive right in. Down to the end, and Keith.
Keith Rivers, I finished last season playing with the Giants. Went to USC for 4 years, played in 3 Rose Bowls and an Orange Bowl, and here to talk about bowls.
I'm Jason Kirk. I'm the college football editor at SB Nation. We have the possibly the world's worst ever college football show on YouTube called Shutdown Fullback.
I'm Eric Malinowski. I'm the night editor of Deadspin. I had absolutely nothing to do with the Manti Te'o story, so I don't know how much I can help. I attended Boston University, which does not have a college football team, so I'm not really sure why I'm on this panel, but I'll try to justify that by the end.
Hi, I'm Ryan Riddle. I went to the University of California, drafted by the Oakland Raiders, played in the NFL for a few years, and now featured columnist for Bleacher Report.
Larry Brown, went to UCLA. I have my own site, LarryBrownSports.com. Also have a background in sports radio as well.
All right, thanks everybody. And as Don said in the intro, I am Kyle Bunch. I am one of the co-founders of Blogs with Balls. I actually went to USC, so Keith, we've got numbers up here. And yeah, exactly. We'll wait until the end. Sneak up on him.
I'll get Heinz Ward out here.
Ooh. Yes, I run a site called Trojan Wire, a USC football blog, and also work for a digital agency called RGA, where we work on digital strategies for brands like Nike and MasterCard and other big sports marketers. So happy to be here. And like I said, wanted to talk about this topic that frequently will incite some rants, and figured that it was something good to cover here, have an open discussion about the bowl system. And lo and behold, after proposing the topic about a month and a half ago, I dove in to do some research in the days leading up to the panel and found that there was quite a bit of data to support the notion that we have a really broken system. I know, shock to probably most of the people in this audience, but said that bowl ratings, TV ratings are down 37% since 1998. This was, I think, this year in particular was maybe 15 or 20 year low for bowl TV ratings. Bowl attendance, physical attendance at the games, averaged 51,000, which is the lowest level since 1979. And I'm sure those of you who watched what was a pretty great college football season, then followed by a lot of really bad games, understand why I think a lot of us from a fan perspective are pretty frustrated. There's a lot of really great games, really great storylines throughout the year. We get to the postseason, we get this parade of just subpar games. So I think just to kind of start things out, I wanted to kind of go down the line and just talk a little bit with everybody here about this sort of broken system, what they see, as sort of some of the biggest flaws or areas that they'd like to see improved, from I think first and foremost from the fan perspective. So going down the line as college football fans, first and foremost, what would you like to see in terms of a better system? Just go ahead and start with Keith down on the end.
I'm not really sure, exactly how a playoff system would work or whatnot, and how it would work with finals for the kids, and kids getting to go home and see their families, because obviously we're gone majority of the year. We don't get very many breaks like the rest of the student's body does. But I guess obviously like everybody else, you would like to see some sort of a playoff system. Other than that, I'm not so sure. And the SEC, I would like to see them have less of a power ranking in the BCS, the numbers ranking, how they do it. They get put in these games all the time. They lose more games than other teams, and they're still number 1, number 2, number 3. So.
I would say introducing the playoff is going to be a big change, and it's going to sort of affect what we think of as those lower tier worthless bowl games. But a word in defense of those games, I mean, people still do watch them. People still eat up any football. That Toledo, Arizona, New Mexico Bowl, it was like a December 15th bowl game, and I believe it still had higher ratings than Indiana Butler, which was a dramatic #1 college basketball game. There's still a market for these games. It's going to get better as we see, the playoff come in and maybe some new rules come in that sort of do away with those 6-6 teams making bowl games. We're going to see better games and therefore a better product overall for everyone. But that's my one little word in defense of those admittedly often crappy bowl games.
I'll go a little bit more in defense of the BCS in theory. I think that from a fan perspective, what I find so frustrating about the BCS is that in theory, it seems like such a great idea. I mean, it seems like such a natural evolution of what sports has been doing for the last 10, 15 years. I mean, being able to bring computers into it and being able to, in theory, more objectively define who are the best teams in the country. Having said that, there are so many problems with it. You've got computer rankings. You've got Jeff Sagarin, for all that he's done for computer rankings, he programs in a code that was developed in the 1950s by IBM engineers. And is that really the kind of system at its root that we want determining who plays in the most important games in the season? I think that it's really easy to fix it with a playoff system. I think that the only question really is sort of how far do we want to go with it? I mean, some people will say that 4 is enough, but I would probably say 8 at least. But that's where I stand.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good consensus that we're all in favor of a playoff system of some sort. I agree with Keith that it's really hard to figure out a way that works for everyone, all parties. One of the downsides I could see coming up is if you have more than eight teams, 16 teams, that's 4 games added on to an already rather lengthy season for college players. If they play a conference championship, you're looking at 16 games in a college season, and that could be an issue. But then there's the question of upholding the tradition of bowl games, and frankly, these things can coexist. You can have playoff games that actually are titled as bowl games. So, and the teams that aren't actually in the playoff system, they can play their normal traditional bowl games, and it seems like the system can coexist, but the details and how to implement this, it's a big change, and people don't like to mess with tradition, even though it seems to be archaic. But
Ryan talked about tradition, and I actually like the bowl system as a whole. I like bowls. I grew up loving watching bowl games around New Year's, around that time, and we're sports fans. For me, that's how it is, and so I like the bowls, but I think there's a lot of modification that's needed, and I think that the two can go together. The problem that I see is that there's just oversaturation. There's just too much. We don't need as many bowl games as there are. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but it's well over 30 bowl games, and there are teams that don't deserve to be playing in postseason bowl games that are making it. Teams that finish below 500 have no business playing in the postseason. They shouldn't be rewarded with that. But a team that went 8-3 or maybe 9-2, those teams definitely, they should be playing in bowl games, and I like that system. And I really do think that what they have planned to switch to, which is the 14 playoff or the +1, to me, that's all that's needed. I think you could go down the list in several past years, and outside of maybe 4 teams, most teams don't deserve to be playing for a national championship. And you could look at this year, for example. I mean, teams like Kansas State that finish up there, a team like Oklahoma, we saw in the bowl games that they did not belong as a contender in the national championship race. I think you can count on your hand the amount of teams that really are national championship contenders. All you need is to play between 4 teams, and that's it. and have the other maybe top 30 teams in the country or so play bowl games. And to me, that would be a good solution.
Yeah, no, and I think that brings up a good point, which is there's sort of two key elements to this sort of postseason discussion. There's the top and the kind of system that we know is evolving, this BCS moving to a playoff. And I think, you go through the last few years, we all love to kind of bemoan the BCS, but typically it does a decent job, right? Like, I mean, there haven't been that many times where you had a national championship game where you were like, the computers really screwed us here. Or there's going to be times where there's three people who maybe have a claim to be in that game and only two of them can go. But there's always going to be that can happen with a 4-team playoff and a fifth team that gets left out. A lot of as I started looking at this topic more, those middle tier games, that full month of now basically full month of football, there just seems like so many games that don't need to happen. To Larry's point of teams that are 6-6 that are now playing a postseason game. Something that we talked about before we came up here. Why do we even? I mean, if these guys aren't really playing for anything but a trophy full of potatoes or whatever it might be at whatever the Belk Bowl and some casual wear, Southern wear. Why do we even care why don't we just set up games we want to see? I mean, do you guys like? I feel like 6-6. We set these arbitrary marks that year to year may not matter. What would happen if we were to just have matchups that people really wanted to see be the focus and not so much hitting some threshold for barely better than mediocre?
Yeah, as it is, every bowl has so many tie-ins with, two conferences, sometimes more than two conferences. Sometimes they have fallback conferences, and sometimes they have specific deals with independents. So we do get stuck with these when the math breaks down a certain way, or when certain teams in the ACC or the Big Ten lately are on probation, and we end up with worse teams going to bowl games. We get stuck with that kind of thing. So there is talk of sort of opening up the market a little bit and making it so that, we can just see interesting matchups without really having to worry about this is the fifth best team from the ACC, filling out a postseason via a spreadsheet. That would be a step in the right direction. I don't know how in the world you do that, who you even talk to convince to make that happen, but that would go a long way towards improving a lot of things.
And I'm curious also from the player perspective. I mean, Keith, you were kind of in a favorable spot to play in a lot of very important postseason games, but how much does that impact as USC fans watching those guys play in a Sun Bowl in El Paso and probably not seeming super up for that game? I mean, wouldn't that help a lot if you were just to play matchups against other interesting teams versus, oh, hey, these guys were fourth place in their conference just like us?
Yeah, I think it would be great if if it's just great matchups. But at the end of the day, I think somebody touched on, people like football, and that's a few weeks without football, people go crazy on Saturdays, and you only have it on Sundays. So people want to see football games, whether it's Butler, whatever team it is. Yeah. People want to see it. But no, me personally speaking, I would have liked to see somebody else play in that game more deserving to play in the whatever bowl it was. No offense to the bowl, but it's the 6-16, they didn't deserve to play in the bowl. So
yeah, USC has already offended El Paso enough over the course of that bowl. We probably should watch what we said. But yes, understood. And I guess the flip side to what I'm arguing for, again, as a fan of a big conference major team, is that if we don't have some of this, then a lot of those mid-major conferences would only struggle that much more to get the money, to get the attention. So I understand that there's a system in place. It just seems like, from a fan perspective, like it's not rewarding us as much as it could. And maybe that's just the selfish kind of POV. But you also hear a lot about how much people who organize bowls make for just a few days worth of work. It sort of seems like a system that rewards a disproportionately small number of people, but that yet we can't fix, and that ESPN makes a lot of money from. So even if they might be able to make some more money from it, hey, ultimately people love football. They'll be able to sell ads against it regardless of who they have on that game. So, I mean, are we just stuck? Do you guys think that what's coming with the obvious? I mean, I'm shocked that we actually got a playoff. I really thought that was going to be something that was going to be more like, I tell my grandkids that there was once a day without a bowl game, but not like my daughter would actually not have to live through seeing lots of no college football playoff. Will it continue to evolve, or is this going to be another 15 to 20 year cycle where this change gets implemented and then that's how it works?
It could be a little bit of both. I mean, the postseason is going to be whatever the Big Ten, the SEC, and ESPN want it to be, because those three are the closest thing we have to a commissioner that weird triumvirate. Everybody's going to go along with whatever they want. It could take 15 or 20 years for it to evolve beyond a 4-team thing for there to be a solution for the lower tier bowls. But, I think we look at the current plan, which is to have, the 2 semifinal bowls and then the 4 other BCS 2.0 bowls that are sort of bolted onto this weird New Year's Day-ish thing. I think we see the seeds of a 10-team playoff, a 12-team playoff right there. I think evolution, I think we can see that the next step is sort of already accounted for, and I don't think it's, I don't think it's all that hard to guess what's coming next. It's just an expanded playoff because money.
I almost feel like the best thing that we can hope for at this point is something a little bit more similar to the way that the NCAA does it with March Madness. I mean, you could debate the silliness of continuing to expand the tournament, going to 68 teams and all that. But for all of that, I mean, it is a committee. It is people in a room. I mean, I know they've been a lot more transparent over the last few years. And, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about the BCS. The BCS is not some, multinational global, evil conglomerate. It is a room in the back of Bill Hancock's house in suburban Kansas City. I mean, that's it. That's the BCS. And he has 2 part-time office assistants. I mean, it's not like any more conspiratorial than that. So I feel like, but this is the entity that is responsible for, all of our woes. So I feel like if they could eventually in time not only move to a playoff, but also move to something that is just a little bit, even just a little bit more in vein with the way that they do March Madness, at least, procedure-wise, I feel like that would benefit the whole process so much more.
I definitely think that we're moving in that direction. If you look at history, the NCAA tournament started off with less than half the field that it has now, and the NIT actually used to be a big deal. Now the NIT rewards the 69th best team in the country. Back in the day, it actually used to mean something when the NCAA tournament was a lot smaller, and naturally over time, there's been more expansion, extra rounds added, and now it's up to 68 teams. So it's natural that we're going to see that same progression for college football where they start off with 2. In 1998, it took how long? 50 years of us missing out on great matchups, Washington, Miami, other teams that didn't get to play because of bowl tie-ins. And finally, in 98, they did it. And now it took until, 2014 or so before they finally expand. I think it's moving that direction. It's probably just going to take time because college football is slower to evolve. But the big reason is, I mean, if they can make more money off of it, if the BCS finds a way to somehow make more money, they're going to expand the playoffs. They're going to make it bigger because it's going to make them richer.
Yeah, I guess that's the part that I look at the cash printing machine that is the NFL at this point, and you look at the numbers between what an NFL TV deal looks like and what some of the college TV deals look like, and that spread's closing. But people love their football, and I feel it's hard to sometimes feel like the NCAA isn't squeezing all the dollars out of it they can. Do you think that's more like inept NCAA leadership? Is that the weird kind of Game of Thrones thing that is the different conferences that each have their own, in some cases rather large chunk of power? Is it the, lovely trips that the bowl commissioners lavish conference leads with and ways they kind of, bribe their way in? Like, who's really to blame for the NCAA not squeezing more money out of this thing ultimately?
I mean, maybe it's really hard to keep track of this when you're spending all day long swimming around in your money bin, But, I mean, why does the NFL keep talking about going to an 18-game schedule? Because it's not only it's more money, but there's also demand. I mean, the demand, the people's appetite for this stuff is insatiable. So, I mean, for them to, the fact that they haven't seen that, well, we can just restructure, the end game, bowl program so that, we can make, the final 2 or 3 weekends worth so much more. And like you said, ratings have been down. Ratings will go back up 37% as soon as they go to something like that. But I mean, honestly, it's just like the sooner it behooves them to do it as soon as possible. I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't at this point.
And I think the money machine concept sort of translates or manifests itself in the saturation issue with all the bowl games. And that doesn't seem to be a solution, or doesn't seem to have a solution with playoffs. So, I mean, really, the reality of the situation is that we're faced with watching a game that is more or less meaningless, but it has a fancy name, and that's going to be a continuation going forward for I don't know, the unforeseen future as far as I'm concerned.
As far as money in the NCAA, I mean, we already see college football is the second biggest sport in America in terms of money. You know, it might be the biggest in terms of, you know, sheer volume of humanity who care about it. You know, maybe if you take out fantasy football, maybe the NFL drops down a peg. But I mean, you know, it's not the NCAA that was holding it back. The NCAA has had very little to do with college football beyond enforcing rules for a long time now. You know, they really are not in charge of the postseason. It really is ESPN and the power conferences. You know, the NCAA, they run the tournaments for every other sport, but there really was no bad guy entity holding back the playoff. You could sort of point to the Big Ten and their clutching onto the Rose Bowl tradition if you wanted to finger a bad guy. But, you know, I don't think we really have to. As far as, you know, the future of that and where that goes, you know, with the lid taken off the money machine, the playoff, you know, they're looking at it's going to bring in, you know, $500 million TV deal a year, $345 million, you know, per year, something like that, going to conferences. The majority of that to power conferences, a lot to the lower tier guys. You know, you break the math down, 25% of the $345 million to the, you know, the Mountain West Conference USA, the MAC, the Sun Belt, that lower tier group. We're looking at schools that are just starting up football that are going to be getting $2 or $3 million a year from the playoff that they might not play in for 50 years. You know, Georgia State in their third year of football is going to get, you know, $3 million in playoff money if all the numbers line up. The Charlotte 49ers are starting up football and will instantly get playoff money. You know, coaching salaries are going to go up. We're going to get to a point where amateurism, you know, we can't pay players. Well, you got a lot of money. You kind of have to pay players at some point. You know, the playoff is it's a can of worms and it's a hornet's nest, and it could change everything. You know, at the NCAA, as it is right now, they're sort of the shadowy thing that, you know, we're in charge, but all you are is a rule book as far as football is concerned. In the future, you know, we could see the power conferences break away from the NCAA. We're going to start our own rule book. There's been chatter about that for a long time now. Even John Calipari, Kentucky basketball coach, has brought that up explicitly. He said take the top 64 power schools and they can start up their own thing. You know, that could happen, you know, and then they can pay players whatever they want. You know, they could pay Cam Newton $1 million a year and it wouldn't matter. Who would stop them? You know, it's not illegal. But, you know, the playoff could really change, you know, far more than just crowning a champion.
All right, well, I think we've got about 10 minutes left, so I probably have one more question, but I wanted, if anybody else has questions, okay, just kind of perfect. So I guess I actually don't really, you know, just kind of, that was a very perfect wrap up of just how big I think that the change that lies ahead could theoretically be, and I know we're all excited to kind of see that play out. Yeah, I guess with that, I'm just going to throw it open to the audience for questions, and then we can wrap up. Yeah, right there.
With the additional games and two former college players especially, what is the line of demarcation where even the NCAA can't possibly justify not paying players at least some sort of postseason?
Just to repeat the question for those watching on the live stream, the question was about how does the NCAA continue to justify not paying players as... Yeah, so is change coming as far as players getting paid as these postseason royalties flood in? Anybody up here?
I think it, just my gut instinct says that it amounts to equality over all the sports within the schools, even the ones that aren't making money. If you pay one sport, you essentially have to pay all sports, and that can get kind of hefty. That's the only thing that I would see as the biggest deterrent from that ever happening.
Like you said, it would be nice to see that happening, especially with the expansion. I mean, say the playoffs expand and they cut the regular season, you got like a whatever playoff system. It would be nice to see guys just get an increased stipend. You know, everybody gets a stipend. It'd be nice to see, and it'd be kind of based on the city you live in. Like a guy in Los Angeles and a guy in Arizona shouldn't get the same amount of stipend. I think, you know, it should adjust it accordingly so guys can live and they can take their girlfriends on dates, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, because I was living in one of the most expensive cities in the world, and I had to do it on $1,000 a month. Most of that went to rent, and the rest, you know, you just kind of scrape by. So I definitely agree with an increase in the stipend for sure.
Over here, Sid.
So with the basketball tournament, there's 64, where there were 64 teams, Dick Vitale complained about the 65th, and now that's 68 complained about the 69th. So talking about 4 teams, right, for college football playoff. What's the best system to to identify those 4 teams. All of a sudden, all you have to put out the 5th team. And does an undefeated team automatically deserve an invitation?
So yeah, again, to repeat for those at home, question was just about, we struggle to find, we have bubble teams when there's 64 slots. How are we going to use, what system are we going to use to get the right 4 into this postseason?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the brilliance of it is we think, oh, this will do away with, drama and controversy. No. It's going to ramp up because now we're not talking about who's the 3rd best team. We're talking about this cluster. Like this year, there was probably 5 SEC teams that could have made the claim to be the number 4 team in the country. And as far as who's going to choose, right now it looks like a selection committee, not composed of old coaches, which there's a lot of old coaches lobbying for that when it came out. Every retired coach would like the honor. But it looks like it's going to be representatives from conferences like it is with the NCAA basketball tournament, which that seems to be the fairest as long as it's transparent as it can reasonably be.
With regards to an undefeated team, I think if you have a system where an undefeated team does not somehow make it into your top 8 or God forbid, top 4, I feel like you have a system that is irrevocably broken. So I feel like then the issues would go so much farther beyond whether or not we give an undefeated team an automatic bid. But, you don't want to be that 5th team and you don't want to be the 9th team. But I feel like in terms of debates, I just feel like
But isn't that some of what makes college football so great? That you don't want to do away with is that every game matters to an extent where, I can't afford a loss even though it's early. I can't risk falling to 5.
I feel like when we start saying things like, isn't that what makes college football so great? We start falling back into those old pro BCS arguments. And I feel like it's our time warp into how we got into this mess in the first place. So I feel like, nostalgia has its place, but I feel like sort of the less that we think of it and we phrase it in those terms, I feel like the healthier the sport will be long term.
There does have to be a best of both worlds kind of thing. An undefeated season, that is precious. That is something that should always mean something. Even Ohio State, they're on, the NCAA sanctions, I don't care. That should always be a very special thing. And it's something that means more in college football than I think it does in any other sport. In the NFL, it was this oddity, this curiosity, and it was a big story. But in college football, it's, for so long, that's been the key to a championship is going unbeaten. And I think we have to do everything we can to hang on to that. Even as we progress and as we change.
And if you play 12 regular season games, I really can't see that taking away from its value. It's just such a small sample size. It's going to have value regardless of a playoff system or not.
Up in front there.
Do you guys think that what happened this year with the ratings going down and the attendance and then the debacle of a title game, do you think that'll speed this process up at all? And is there a timeline that you guys can foresee?
Question was just, does the ratings and the attendance and all of the drops and then a not great national championship game lead to accelerate any of the changes that we're talking about up here?
Yeah, that could, accelerate some of the lower tier bowl changes. The playoff stuff is on course for 2014. You could make the case that the Alabama versus Oklahoma State getting into the title game to play LSU 2 years ago, you can make the case that sped up the playoff process. But, the playoff is coming. The money truck is backing up, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. It is a good question. If the lower tier bowls keep losing ratings, they're gonna have to do something. They're gonna have to break up the matchups a little bit, clear up some of the roughage, get some of the 6-6 teams out of there. Try a few of those things. Maybe move some destinations around. Maybe kill some of the Beef O'Brady's of the world.
One of the problems is ESPN is televising most of these lower tier bowl games. They're making money, and the reason why they're trying to put on as many bowl games as they can is because they sell the commercials. They're making money off of every single one of these games. They get sponsors. Obviously, the sponsors are happy to sponsor it, so they're happy. Who's losing out in this whole thing? And that's the big question. And to me, looking at some of the numbers, it's the schools that are. They're the ones that are getting stuck buying whatever tickets they don't sell. If their ticket allotment is 10,000 and it's a bad bowl game because they have a 6-6 team, only 1,000 fans buy it, the school is footing the bill. So to me, in order to get rid of that, the only group that can really make a change would be the schools and say, we're not going to send a team because it's a losing deal for us. And that's what it comes down to. I think that's the only group that's powerful to stop that process. Otherwise, ESPN wants to put on as many as they can because they're making money off of it. The schools are the ones that are losing. I think they're the only ones that can really put a stop to it somehow.
And because those deals get negotiated on multi-year basis, it's like 1 year may be down, but by the next time the deal comes up, they can point to a couple years that were good, help justify keeping the money machine flowing.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think you're going to see too many schools, taking that principled stand. They're just going to eat the losses. It's unjust that, excuse me, that schools would lose money on a postseason game that generates money for someone else, and get stuck with tickets that they can't sell. But coaches need the bowl practices. If you don't take those 15 bowl practices, you're basically leaving a mini camp off the table. Your team is falling behind already, for next season. There's that. It looks bad. There's the branding thing. You want your team to be, the one team on national TV at any one point. I don't think we're going to see too many schools turning down bowl bids. Notre Dame did a few years ago, but they're Notre Dame. They're weird. It's going to be somebody bigger than just schools. The conferences themselves are going to have to do something there.
I guess we have one last question, and then we'll wrap. The question was about how we break the SEC stranglehold on and current kind of tilt of power in college football.
I think the preseason deal will be hard to break due to the fact that coaches get bonuses based on we're preseason #1 team, et cetera. But yeah, it'd be nice to break the SEC stranglehold. I mean, there's an East Coast bias, so obviously, a lot of people they get all the press and all the love, and then teams on the West Coast that people don't get to see throughout the week. They don't get as much love until the end of the year, and it's they lose a game and it's too late. It would be nice to see that break up a little bit, but obviously I don't see that happening in the preseason deals happening. It'd be nice to see, like the BCS comes out week 5 or something like that. It'd be nice to see all the polls come out week 5, but there's too many incentives for college programs to be preseason #1 and preseason top 25, et cetera. So.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. If you have questions, I'm sure the panelists will be around. You guys can maybe catch them afterwards. But for now, let's just take a second and thank all 5 of our panelists going down the line: Keith, Jason, Eric, Ryan, and Larry. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks, everyone. We're actually going to keep it moving and bring our next panel up. We're here in Los Angeles, and we're playing a football game in Los Angeles, albeit in a soccer stadium. And it seems to be a hot issue that the more we sort of dug into it, the more almost polarizing the issue is, more than we realize. So we're going to bring Chris Lucas, Kyle and mine, our other partner with BWB, who's going to lead the panel discussion on the NFL in Los Angeles and why there isn't a team here.
I could take him off. I mean, I could do this too.
I'm Liz. Hi, Molly. Nice to meet you.
What's up, Steve? Okay.
Nice to meet you. I don't need a microphone.
Yeah.
I don't.
Just a quick comment for all our viewers at home. I got a nice text saying this is going really well. It's really sharp. The picture's great. The audio's great. But when the moderator's talking, that restroom sign behind them is just striking out there. So we've acknowledged it, but you're going to have to deal with it.
Cool. Thank you, Don, for that restroom update. Again, hello, everyone. My name is Chris Lucas, also of BWB. And we're going to spend the next 40 minutes or so discussing will the NFL ever return to the City of Angels? And what I'd like to do is start it out by asking each of the panelists to introduce themselves and answer the simple question, should the NFL come back to Los Angeles? And just a quick yes or no. We'll start at the end.
Doug Farrar, run the Yahoo Sports NFL blog Shutdown Corner, and I think in the pre-internet era, the answer is yes. I think in the post-internet era, the answer is maybe.
Hi, I'm Steve Smith, NFL wide receiver for the St. Louis Rams, and I think it would be good to have an NFL team back in Los Angeles.
Hi, I'm Liz Mullen. I'm a writer with Sports Business Journal. And yes, of course, I'm an Angelino also. I have a 12-year-old son who grew up with no football, who's a San Diego Chargers fan. This is the best city in the world. Everyone knows it. We have the coolest people in the world live in this city who can afford to pay for suites and everything. Of course, yes. The answer is yes. They have their own microphones.
I'm Molly Knight. I write for ESPN, the magazine. I'm also an Angelino, born and raised, and I say yes.
Arash Markazi from ESPN Los Angeles, and I say yes, because it would obviously help me. I'd probably cover those teams, and it'd be good for me personally. I have to drive down to San Diego to see the NFL. That's a long drive.
Awesome. Well, all right. Well, thank you all. I would like to, and Doug, we're going to come back to you because you're the only one who said no on a post-internet era. No. Maybe. All right.
What's the matter, Doug?
We're already qualifying, yes. But I'd like to start off with, say, more the cynical view here, which is, just to get that out of the way, which is there actually a legitimate reason that the NFL would not want to bring a team here so that it can be used as a bargaining chip to build stadiums in other cities? Like, does the NFL benefit, in your view, from keeping a team out of here more than it does bringing one here? Your thoughts? Anyone, go for it.
I believe absolutely. Yeah, the NFL benefits totally. It's the 800-pound gorilla. It's the big threat it can hold over. And even if a team were to come back to LA, I think it's impossible not to make money in the NFL. No matter how dumb you are, if you own an NFL team, you're going to make a huge amount of money. Everyone knows this. So even if a team comes to LA via relocation or expansion, the NFL can still say, well, if you don't meet these standards, whatever those standards are at any given point in time, the need to from the owner's financial standpoint, from the community's financial standpoint, it's this enormous thing no matter what. So the NFL does benefit, but even if that changes and a team does come here and that void is filled, I don't know that it would be too much less of a threat for existing owners.
I think the NFL benefits from there not being a team here. Just like you said, that you can negotiate with other cities and towns, saying that we're thinking about having a team in LA. What are you going to do to keep your team here? How much money are you going to be able to raise? Different things like that for marketing and stuff like that. But, if if an NFL team is in LA, they're going to make so much money, and it's just going to benefit the NFL and the team, I think, a lot much more.
I think the NFL, for the same reasons these gentlemen said, has benefited in the past. However, in this state of the economy in this country, in every city in America, I cannot imagine that you're going to continue to have this situation where taxpayers pay for stadiums. So if they have benefited, in my opinion, and perhaps some of the other panelists know more, is that it's about to end.
California just balanced its budget too, right? Are they going to want to pay for a stadium?
California will never pay for a stadium.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing is that they don't have to. We have two proposals
Right.
on the table that no taxpayers' dollars. And the NFL has benefited greatly. 22 new stadiums since the NFL left here. I would imagine half of those teams basically said, if you don't build us something, we're going to leave. So the way that they could work around that, though, they've said that the new stadium would house two teams. So theoretically, let's just say the Chargers moved here, they could still say, well, there's room for two teams there. So, there's always ways, I guess, around that.
It's sort of weird to think about another team from another market moving here also, if how LA will embrace that or accept it. It's been mentioned that the money is incredible. Obviously, the suites will be bought and the seat licenses will be taken out. But it's kind of weird, right, to think about the Los Angeles Jaguars, or I guess the Rams or the Raiders would be People had that before, so it wouldn't be as strange, but it is kind of weird.
Is that why you said maybe in a post-internet era, Doug, that people they can follow their the teams that they have allegiances to easier now than maybe in the past? And
Well, not only that, but so much more because revenue obviously for both sides comes primarily from two things: TV deals and digital rights fees. Attendance right now, I mean, I would defer to Liz on this, but it's probably third. Just as far as sheer attendance, even when you have luxury suites and boxes and things like that. I know that so much more digital rights fees were put into the new CBA as far as the split went. So I think post-internet, where it's so much more of that global reach, and you can get all 22 from NFL Game Rewind and NBC's doing their stuff live on the internet, it's not nearly as much about location. So I think the location factor is not eliminated, but it's certainly lessened.
Well, here's the other thing. I mean, you don't need a team in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles doesn't need to have a team. I mean, the NFL is so popular, you could have successful teams in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Jacksonville, Florida, and Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's totally fine. But it's the fact of, would you like to have a team? And I think it would be hard to imagine the NFL wouldn't want to have a Super Bowl here and to have like a team here. But again, it's going on 20 years, so I don't know.
well, as far as the latest developments, who in your mind is going to blink first? So right now you have the scenario where they are not going to, the AEG is the current owner of Farmers Field, and they're not going to kind of move forward until a team signs a lease. But at the same time, AEG is also in the process of being bid on, right? Yeah. So a team is probably unlikely to sign a lease until they know who owns it. So in your view, how does this catch-22 end? Anybody? Who blinks?
Well, Arash knows more about this than me, I think. But I talked to a couple of people in LA. My understanding is this. So, and you can explain the deadlines better with the, is there a February 15th
February
deadline,
15th.
right?
That's why no team
And
will-
it's not going to happen by then. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, but and maybe Arash can fill in the blanks. My understanding of it, and I talked to somebody who's been very involved in possibly owning teams, is that it can go from 0 to 100 in 10 seconds flat. And that basically you have to have teams that will negotiate with the stadiums. And both of the stadiums are entitled, is that correct? Because Arash knows more about it.
You could I mean, they're basically to the point where they could push dirt as soon as the team decides to move.
Right.
Yeah.
And the AEG is for sale. They've started the bid process where billionaires who want to pay 10 to $12 billion, or corporations who are going to pay that, are going to pay it. And the way it would work with AEG, if that were to happen, is you cannot have a corporation owning an NFL club. So therefore, if you have, say, for example, Coca-Cola wants to buy AEG, you have to have a human being, you know, the CEO of Coca-Cola, or whoever, Warren Buffett, or some billionaire guy. And then that guy would buy 20 to 30% of one of these teams that could move. And my understanding, and Arash, please correct me, we're talking about the Rams, Raiders, Chargers, Bills, and Jaguars, right?
Yeah, I mean, the most
Right?
realistic,
Those are the Boston Bruins.
the most realistic right now is the Chargers and the St. Louis Rams. And just having covered this for years, I can guarantee you, I don't know if I want to say guarantee. I'm 99% sure the Chargers won't get a new stadium in San Diego and the Rams won't get one in St. Louis. So just a matter of time. I mean, do you want to stay where you are or do you want to move? That's the question, I guess.
Well, and as far as the Chargers, would anybody notice? I mean, they've had how many blackouts this season?
Yeah, and they're increasing ticket prices. I don't know how that's going to work, yeah.
All right, so we've heard, you guys mentioned you're as fans. Steve, I'm interested to know, as from a player perspective, what is attractive about playing in Los Angeles?
Oh, I mean,
If
playing
anything.
in Los Angeles is so attractive. Just all the people that are out here, all the celebrities, the celebrity that you get for playing for an LA team, all the hookups you're going to get. You better go to restaurants and clubs and get clothes. And I played in New York, so I see, the big town, the media. I mean, it's just so many eyes on you, and it's just a great opportunity.
And now, does that help or hurt a team that's trying to build, though? So if you're coming into the second biggest media market in the world, or in the country, and you're kind of putting a team together, do you want that kind of pressure and that viewership and that expectation? Because this is LA, we deserve the best. Yeah, right? You just said it was the best. Yeah, right?
The best.
Yes, there's an entitlement that's coming through here. Is that a good thing as a player? Like, do you want that kind of immediate attention and, like you said, celebrity, or do you actually want the time to kind of build the program and build it up so that it's worth the viewership?
This is the NFL, man. This is, come on, we need the pressure, you know what I mean? And this is LA, so I think being a player and being in LA, you want that pressure, you welcome it, and I think it's just going to only make the organization have to live up to high expectations.
But Steve, the media here isn't as evil as it is in New York, right?
Yeah, we're pretty.
Then it's not as bad here. There's a lot of people, but it's not as on you as bad.
Doug, you had something to add?
I think one pure football advantage that a team in LA would gain is that, I mean, there's IMG in Miami and API has centers in Arizona and I think Houston, but there's more. There's right, exactly here. But there's more, including what they do here, there's more football-specific off-season training, I think, in LA than anywhere else. So a team here, you almost have team facility offshoots no matter where you want to go. So just from a pure football sense and off-season training and getting your guys ready for the season, that's kind of a hidden advantage, I think.
Yeah, and if you're getting recruited by Jacksonville and Los Angeles, and it's a pretty close offer, my assumption is Steve Smith would sign with the Los Angeles, whatever.
Yeah.
The team is.
You want to save money on state tax.
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the fan perspective too. So there's been, since 1994, the Rams left. There's been a lot of time to develop loyalties to other teams. Do you feel like people are going to make the switch just like that? Or do you feel like the people who have been Raiders fans for however long are going to stick with the Raiders and just kind of feel it out? Or what are your senses on fan acquisition?
You know, the feeling I have is if the Rams come back, you keep that because they have 50 years of history or whatnot here. But if it's the Chargers and certainly the Jaguars, you would have to make that like a new team, I think. That's my opinion, to make that property of Los Angeles. So, because I just have a feeling if it's the Los Angeles Jaguars or something else with the same logo, it's not going to feel the same.
Molly?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're in this weird place where ESPN, our company, is like pushing the Jets onto LA, and like because of the Mark Sanchez connection, and we all know how that worked out this year. So I mean, I think there's definitely a vacuum right now, and Arash is right. They'd have to rebrand it because I don't see LA being like Jaguars, but the LA like traffic fighters, I guess, could work pretty well.
Well, first of all, this is a town we like winners. We don't like losers.
Right.
That's just how it is. I mean, that's just how Los Angeles is. And then we're also a city where a lot of people still have moved here from somewhere else. So like one of my best friends, who has money to buy suites and stuff, he's a Steelers fan. But he's going to buy a suite because, especially if it's an AFC team, because he has to have seats when the Steelers come. When you have enough people with money in the city who are going to have seats, even if they're empty, they're going to have seats. Even if the team is 0-15, they're going to have seats. But you have, and Raiders fans is a whole other story. Okay, Raiders fans are like a breed of people unto themselves. God bless them. I love them. Except when the Chargers played the Raiders and I had to go to the seats and all that. That was. But you're gonna. I don't. If it becomes an LA team and the team wins in LA.
Yeah.
It's LA's team. Yeah. You're going to have movie stars. You're going to have music people. You're going to have. It is going to be the coolest stadium ever, and people are going to want to be there if it wins. That's it. That's my opinion. What is Steve?
I agree with everything you just said.
There you go.
Well, I lived in Seattle for a long time, and I find it interesting that now there's the 12th man and the whole crazy stuff and then all the noise up there, and it's like, oh, the fandom. I was there in the late 90s when they almost moved, and there were more opposing jerseys in the stands than, not a lot of blue. And it wasn't until they brought Mike Holmgren in, who was the hottest name at the time, and they developed a team that could go to a Super Bowl. It's not real hard to figure out that winning breeds fandom. It's like the Mariners they've had the worst attendance in a number of years because they can't win. And Liz pointed it out. You like winners here, you like winners everywhere. If they start to win, if they start to build up that culture and tradition, I think it'll surpass whatever preconceptions there might be about the fickle LA market or anything like that. You're going to have the crazy football fans here that you would have anywhere else.
Real quick, this thing is going to take time. The league made a huge mistake. I mean, they've returned to every city that they've been in within a few years. You know, the St. Louis Cardinals left; they got the Oakland got a team back, Houston got a team back, Cleveland got a team. I mean, like, they return within a few years. It's been 20 years, so of course you have a kid who's going to be 22 who doesn't even remember that we had a team here. So when the league talks about that, yeah, because you've lost a generation of fans. So what do? Well, it has to begin at some point. So you come back, and it's not going to be at the beginning because, like I said, at the beginning you're going to have Steeler fans and Chargers fans and whatnot. But in 20 years or in due time, you're going to create that. But it's a little embarrassing for a league of that size to just leave Los Angeles, 2 teams, by the way, in the same year, and not think it's a priority to come back. And again, not because the league needs to come back, because at the same time that they left, around that time, we got the internet and DirecTV and fantasy football and da-da-da. And then, like, the league grew in popularity. But I just think it looks better for the league to have a team here. So, I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, fair enough. So from what I've heard, it makes a lot of financial sense. It makes sense from the fan view. It makes sense from the player's view. Why hasn't it happened in 20 years then? Really, like why? Like you all have made great points, but like, what's the thing in your mind? What is it?
The league keeps talking about this perfect plan, and if you look at the history, and Liz, from when you covered it and from the time I'm covering it, they always like to have 2 proposals. Okay, which 2 do we like? And none of the 2 work perfectly for them. It's either the location or the funding or the whatever, and it's just. I mean, really, like, if the league truly wanted a team back, they would have had a team here by now. They just want to come back, and it's sort of like, listen, there's going to be games. If it's the Los Angeles Rams versus the Cleveland Browns, and both teams are struggling, it will not be sold out. But I have Sunday ticket, and I watch a lot of games on Sunday that are not sold out. I don't understand why Los Angeles has to be held to some higher standard that, you know, you have to sell out all the games, and when we come back, it has to be just right. Just come back. I just think it would be good to have a team here.
But wouldn't you be worried, or my sense is they'd be worried that it would be kind of like a Clippers scenario where they're going to spend...
Have the second best record in the NBA.
Right, but how long did it take them to get there? I mean, for a while it was like the Clippers was like, oh, you're adorable.
Well, okay, do you want to have a bad team in Jacksonville or a bad team in Los Angeles? Here's the thing. Worst case scenario, you have a team in Los Angeles. You're hosting the Super Bowl here once every few years. Right. Maybe you have the Pro Bowl here. Maybe you have the Combine here. You go. There is no the NFL before they had this game here. There was like no connection to Los Angeles. Last game in Los Angeles was December 24th, 1994. There hasn't been a preseason game here. There hasn't been a regular season. There's been no This league left Los Angeles and hasn't done a single thing to come back. Like, you could have held a draft here. You could have held a preseason game. You could have done something. They've left and they haven't come back, and that's on the league. I mean, a part of it's the city, but a huge part of it's the league, I think.
You just can avoid approving Donald Sterling as an owner in the NFL to avoid the Clipper problem too. I think having good ownership is would get around that problem.
And by the way, the reason 2 teams left is we had 2 of the worst owners in the history of pro football, as my man here can attest to.
Well,
if I could just
real
quick,
please.
I think there are 3, just to make it short, 3 reasons it hasn't happened here in the last 20 years. Number 1, in the 90s, you had a lot of teams in flux. That was a big, either they dissolve, they move, they do whatever. Second, you had the change in commissionerships in the 2000s, and Tagliabue knew he was sort of winding down. Goodell came up. The third problem is you talk about a Super Bowl in L.A., a preseason game in L.A. There's one guy in the NFL office, and his whole job is to facilitate the NFL in London. The NFL's not interested in development in Los Angeles without a team. So that idea, which seems to make a lot more sense than London, for goodness sake, to have specific football-related events in LA, there's no one in the league office forwarding that notion. So those are the three things to me. Why hasn't it happened in 20 years? To me, you can wrap it up in those three things.
Well, elaborate a little bit more on the London thing in terms of like, so there's somebody who's staffed for just developing London, developing a European market.
Yeah, I find it interesting that they tore down NFL Europe, which was a decent developmental league, which the league needs in the first place, by the way. But it's now we want to have games there, we want to have a Super Bowl there, we want to have a team there. For whatever reason, the NFL's doing that. I'm not really sure why. That's more attractive to them than an LA solution. So the LA solution will have to come to the NFL.
But I think they're two separate things. Since the NFL left Los Angeles, there have been over 29 or 30 games that have been in London, China, Mexico. I mean, it's smart to grow the league. Like, the league is popular here, and the league knows that they don't have to come back here for it to be popular, because there's bars throughout the Southland that have, you got your Chicago Bears bar, and your Cowboys bar, and your Steelers bar. So there's fans here. I mean, we don't need, here's the thing, we don't need to have a team here, and the league does not need to have a team here.
But do we need to have a team in London?
No. But that's what it never made sense to me either, because I think the NBA's talking about that too, and I just think it's a huge stretch to think you're going to have a team in Los Angeles, for example, travel to London. I mean, I don't even know. That's a long flight. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, the question is, why don't we have a team here? Okay, so who runs the NFL? The owners of the NFL teams.
Mm-hmm.
They're 32 billionaire people, right? Why don't they want to have a team here? I mean, it's not like, oh, we can't fill a stadium, we don't have enough people here. It has to do with those people. And I think, Arash, and you say that, how many times has this been used as a bargaining chip? And when was the
22.
latest time?
Minnesota. In Minnesota, they said that directly.
Year? Last year?
This past year.
This past year.
Yeah.
So the reason why is that we will never, this state, no, and then that's why we have the stadium problem in every NFL club that's in the state. Taxpayers in California will never pay for any sports stadium. They won't do it. But California's always been a leader for the rest of the country in what they'll do. So, I mean, that's it. But you certainly have billionaires who live in this city. I wonder if one of the reasons why we don't have a team in this city is because what I've been told and what I believe, look at the Dodgers sale.
Yeah.
So whoever, one of these owners, Rams, Raiders, Chargers, any of these clubs that move here, what I have heard and been told by people who do money deals and that, is whoever gets that team's value is going to double in price immediately. Right. So which one of the 32 billionaires is going to be the lucky guy or gal to get, and what sort of an increase? We have, these teams are worth $1 billion at least, to get $1 billion increase in the value of their team. That may be an issue.
But hasn't the commissioner said he'd prefer an expansion team rather than moving a team?
There's no way they're going to have an expansion team.
They're not gonna-
Any
questioning from us here?
Yes, I'm not sure on time. Don, how are we doing on time? About 20 minutes? Yeah, so we'll take just a couple more of them, and then, I love it. I like it. Yeah, leaning into it.
I was just thinking that it would be even easier. I'm sure location is an issue if they just use the Rose Bowl or the Coliseum, kind of renovate it a little bit, and maybe put your dollars to a nice training facility for the team, and then that'll be an easier transition for organization.
Well, actually, let's do that. Let's move out to the. I've already seen hands up, so go for it. And I'm just going to repeat it back, just so that the folks out there can hear it too.
So when the Farmers Field plan was sold to the city, it's very apparent. The mayor, Rio LaGrossa even said 2 teams. Like, came out in the press conference football, like, hey, we're probably going to have 2 teams. And right at the same time is when Godell said maybe it would be better if we had 2 expansion teams. 2 expansion teams here. I don't.
He threw that idea out there during a interview, and from everyone I've talked to within the league, they are not looking to expand. So I think he said the only way that would happen in the next year or so is if we had 2 expansion teams, but that's not going to happen. So I
We're so far away from it happening now anyway.
yeah.
With the Vikings deal now going for another like 6 years, whatever that stadium, I think the San Diego Chargers, they have until what, 2020?
They can leave after every year, so they could leave next year.
The Chargers.
My sort of odds-on favorite right now is the St. Louis Rams leaving after their whole. They're in arbitration, but they're so like the city wants to make slight changes for like 120 million or 200 million, and basically St. Louis Rams are saying we want a 700 million. So they're so far apart, and basically he wants to leave. That's the feeling I get. So yeah.
I mean, they're making the statements that they want to stay. I still think that
You have to say that.
But I think
Yeah.
you still have 2 expansion that guy wants to ask you're not going to have it
Yeah.
7 or 8 years. I think you should have 2 expansion teams.
Yeah, for some reason the league does not agree with expansion right now. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen in the future, but sure, I agree. Yeah.
Real quick, and then we're going to go to you. So, Steve, do you think the players in the Rams would be okay with that?
Oh, I know so. We talked about it all season
sure
long.
Steve-
We will be out literally in practice,
Pride
during
Taft High School
practice,
in
talking
USC.
about playing in LA, honestly. So.
And all right, so you talk about, but what comes up? What does that mean? You
We're
talk
just
about
like, man, how nice would it be to just be practicing right now in LA and get to go to the mall after in LA, and it's such a
Yeah.
beautiful day all the time, and you know, so.
Cool.
And real quick, as these guys can attest to, there's 40, 50 years of history with the Rams here, and I think if they were to come back, it's not like a brand new thing. You're talking about Jack Youngblood and all these guys would come back to support it, and I'll let these guys have their time.
Go for it. Ask a question.
I really am not going to ask a question. I have a statement, and I think some of us fans should be sitting up there with those guys. My name is Eric Geller. I'm a member of the media. I was raised in Los Angeles. We had season tickets to the Rams from 1973 until Christmas Eve 1994. The Rams had 50 years here, and I think for you people, for some of you to think that the NFL doesn't need to be in LA, I think that's completely wrong because LA is the entertainment capital of the world. You have 2 NBA teams, 2 major league teams, and the last 17 years we've missed out on seeing Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, Ray Lewis is retiring. It's ridiculous, and yeah, the NFL is going to make money no matter what with fantasy football and all this, but a team needs to be here, and it's ridiculous. The only reason there isn't a team here is because of the stadium issue. Otherwise, who wouldn't want to come here?
You agree? The only reason that thank you for that. The only reason that the team isn't in here is because of the stadium issue.
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Yeah.
I have one more thing to say really quickly, if I can.
Go for it.
The NFL trying to go to London, to me, it's like a major company outsourcing and having cheaper labor in a different country. Because if you come to LA for an exhibition game, I remember going to see Times charity games with the Rams and the Cowboys playing in summer because the Cowboys were out in Oxnard. The place was filled. But if you do something like that, you make more money and you keep the money being spent here instead of in London. So to me, it's like Microsoft going to China for cheaper labor.
Except that it's more expensive outsourcing, and it's going to cost a lot more money to facilitate a team in London
No,
anyway.
I understand that, but you got to take care of here first. I mean, this is the entertainment capital of the world. It's ridiculous.
I think we're all in agreement on that.
George is happy to call the commissioner after this, yeah, so he's good on that. All the way in the back. So the question is, how much is it actually the city political issues versus the NFL saying yes or no? Is that correct?
That was a big problem because the city wanted it to be at the Coliseum. The perception of the league of the Coliseum was really bad. They did not want to return to the Coliseum. So, yeah, well, that's so until the city council finally said the NFL is not coming back to the Coliseum, which happened around 2004-05, then things began to pick up. But yeah, for a long time it was like, we can remodel the Coliseum, and they're like, we are not coming back to the Coliseum.
Anybody else?
I mean, I think the political issue has been the same all the time. It's not a political issue in the city of Los Angeles. It's a political issue of, we are never going to pay any taxpayer money for a stadium.
That's the other big thing.
And that has not changed. That's stayed the same. And so Arash has been covering it more than I have, and he tells me it's still the case where you have owners in cities who are trying to get money from taxpayers. And if they move here to, you don't want to set that precedent.
Yeah.
And that's the same. And to me, that's the political issue.
What's the
That
precedent you don't want to set?
You don't want it to set a precedent of, okay, well, LA will not pay for, taxpayers will not pay for a football stadium in Los Angeles. So then, if you're in Kansas City or whatever, a small town, then the taxpayers are going to say, people in LA won't pay, we're not going to pay either.
But
You
that's
don't
why
wanna
they're not going to
establish
get a
that
stadium in San Diego because they're not going to pay for it. In St. Louis is the same thing.
I don't know as much about the specific. I'll defer to my Angelino friends, but as a resident of a city that lost its basketball team and didn't have to, I'll say two things. Leagues do not want refurbished stadiums or arenas under any conditions, and taxpayers are not going to pay for them anymore.
100%. Yeah.
It's private ownership or nothing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right here.
I want to make a comment because I actually went to the game in London this year, and it was a great event, fantastic support. But every British or European fan, I asked them point blank, would an NFL team be supported? And to a man, every one of them said no. They said that, you know what, they love it. They say that American football, the game that they have every year, it is a slice of America that everyone loves. But
To have it
soccer,
every
is king. Soccer is absolutely king, and they love their football once a year.
Mhm.
And there's, again, it's a great turnout, it's a great event, and it's a great thing that the NFL does. But supporting a team there in the league over the course of a season is completely unrealistic.
Right.
Even to everyone who loves American football in England.
So even the folks in the UK or in London who like the NFL, it's more of a novelty thing for them. And
Exactly.
versus,
It's
gotcha.
It's a great novelty.
Mhm.
It's
Right. Brian Bassett.
If the taxpayers aren't going to pay for the stadium, talking about PSLs, what do people think about paying $20,000 for a seat at a stadium? If the taxpayers aren't paying, the owners are not paying $1 billion for a stadium. I'm a Jets fan, so I know.
The question is if the taxpayers aren't going to pay through public funding, are they willing to pay in ticket prices? Is that right?
We have some
In personal seat license.
We have some very rich people in Los Angeles, and they in the entertainment industry, and they spend that for lunch. So we can, the sports
but
is
the
not
Yankee
for
Stadium's still
regular
empty.
fans anymore. That hasn't been the case for how many years now? And so in Los Angeles, that's the point. You have people here who would pay those prices for when and if we ever have a hot winning team. They have to have those seats. They must have them. They're going to have them. That's it. They'll pay it.
Yeah, I have friends in the entertainment industry who are ready to get on a waiting list right now and put up, $20,000, $30,000 to get on a waiting list for that seat license.
I guess, sorry, just one thought. Are there 80,000 people?
Yeah, are there 80,000 people who are willing to do that?
Well, the great thing about it is that the sizes of the two proposed stadiums would be about 55 to 60 or whatnot during a season. And then the PSLs you're talking about, I don't know what the number would be, but the football stadium that will be built here will not be the same size as the Coliseum or something like that. They get that it needs to be smaller. So,
Sid, you had a...
I guess I don't understand. Everybody talks about the need to move back to LA, and I'm perfectly thrilled that there's a team here, and everybody that I know is perfectly thrilled. You don't have
That there is a team here? That there's not a team here?
You don't have to get Sunday ticket to get the best team games on TV. You know,
but you still get stuck with like the Chargers games or other games. A lot of times, though.
But not always. They don't sell out.
Yeah, but I guess my question or whatever to you, yeah.
So I don't understand what the big need is. The NFL is soaring. Everybody's making lots of money. The fans in LA don't need it.
So the question is, do the fans really need it?
Real quick, yeah.
Need it? Need it? Okay,
Like
yeah.
the point that I keep making is this not a need thing.
But that's a good question. If it is the Jaguars, like...
Yeah, I mean,
Go
the
ahead.
point was made earlier. You have millions of people here who never got to see Brett Favre, who never have gotten to see Tom Brady come here, who've never got to see Ray Lewis. I mean, I just know that people would be into that, and I think
Yeah.
it's very sad that hasn't happened.
I've never seen Brett Favre play live. I don't care.
Well, that's true. No, that's
but
true.
there's
but
little
a lot
kids
of,
that might.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was a kid growing up in LA and never really had ties to a LA team. I was always looking to Dallas or San Francisco or something, to some other team. I want to grab something from home, and maybe me now a professional, I might be able to play for my home team. So
Yeah. Let's go right here.
You referred to the team winning a couple times. What happens if they don't?
So oh, go ahead. Did you?
You asked me?
The question is just really quick. Yeah. So we talked about it'll be a success if the team wins, but what if they
people
don't?
won't want to be seen there. They're not going to be seen there. Would you agree, Steve? He's from. Yeah. See, they're not going to be seen, but they'll pay.
Yeah.
But they'll pay for when and if.
It'll
the
be
team
similar
wins, but they're not
to
gonna wanna be
half
seen.
the other leagues, you know.
Right. But look at here.
Right.
Yeah, well, this is not. Yeah,
I mean,
it's going to be comparable to Miami. Have you ever watched a game in Miami where the team's not doing too well?
Yeah.
And
well,
the
there you are.
bright orange, empty seats.
But you can
You know,
have
it
something
just
like,
happened.
So in horse racing, we have Del Mar.
Yeah.
Okay. And I went to Del Mar like last summer on a Friday night, and I'm a horse player. I know horse racing. And it was a horrible card, 7-race card on a Friday night, and it was packed. Beautiful people, gorgeous people. Steve would like to go, huh? Yeah, beautiful, handsome people. You know, it was a social event. So if you have NFLPA in LA, you have a winning team here, you have movie stars hanging out the rafters, which you will have, and they win and they go to the Super Bowl, to me it increases the value of the NFL. I mean, I don't see how you can't, right? You think so?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. In the back, there was. So your question is: are we here? Are you hearing from the media as actually being an advocate for LA for an LA team?
Yeah, the league just signed a 10-year contract agreement for the TV, so that's not going to change. But I'm sure they would like to have a team here.
Yeah, I mean, ESPN would love to have LA versus New York, or LA versus New England, or LA versus Steelers, or LA versus anybody, just from a market standpoint. Absolutely.
Doug, did you have something? Were you about to talk?
Well, the NFL is going to gross $20 billion primarily from the TV deals by the end of this decade, whether LA is involved or not. The question is, what's the high side? That's what they have to look at.
Go for it.
Steve, for being a former USC player, you talked about growing up here, you looked up to Dallas Cowboys. I'm sure you also looked up to USC. How much does it hurt if an NFL team comes here, UCLA and USC's fan base?
Wait, so the question is, would it hurt to take the?
If an NFL team comes here, does it hurt USC and UCLA, their brand?
So
Yeah,
if an NFL team comes here, does it hurt USC's brand, like the other teams that exist
I don't
here?
know. I don't think it hurts the brand necessarily, but it might hurt maybe some ticket sales because people might want to go to the NFL game that's on Sunday instead of that game on Saturday. You know, me being at SC, when I was there, we said we were the NFL team of LA anyway. But, you know, I don't know. We'd have to see when that time comes.
So people who went to USC, what does USC stand for? No offense to people from there.
Careful, that's half the
University
people
of
here.
Spoiled Children. So people who went to USC, they have a lot of money. I know some of them, they're my friends. You know, some of them are, and they have a lot of money. So I don't think it would hurt ticket sales at USC. That's just me, though.
Yeah.
I do. I don't know why. I have
wanna
no
be
money.
Who else? There were a couple other hands up. All right, cool. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to go down through each of you and have you make a prediction of what team will move here and what year they will be playing in Los Angeles in a new stadium. What team, what year?
Okay, I'll go.
Use a mic.
I'll go first. I predict the Rams, the St. Louis Rams, moving here the year after this season, this coming up season.
So 2014?
Yeah, 2014.
Awesome. Who else? You're now officially on record.
San Diego Chargers 2016 in the new stadium after moving out of Dodger Stadium. That's my upset pick.
Wow.
I'm going to get crazy here.
Go for it.
Me?
Yeah,
Oh,
Liz.
God. I'm looking at these teams. I think it's going to be, whoever the team is, it's going to be a different ownership than you have now. Like a completely different owner is not in the NFL right now. And it's going to be 2016, and I'll say Bills.
Oh. That was the Bills, in case you didn't hear that.
Oh, they did? Well, forget. I thought they were on my list. All right, hold on. I'll take, who's going to sell their team? Raiders.
Raiders. Raiders in 2016? Is that what you just said?
Somebody keeps calling me.
Go ahead.
I'm hearing groans from LA there.
Am I the only one who doesn't think it's going to happen? Because if the NFL wanted a team here, there'd be a team here. I would love for there to be a team here. I would go to many games as a reporter and as a spectator. I don't think it's happening in the next 15 years. Sadly, sorry.
I think the St. Louis Rams come back home to Los Angeles in 2015.
In 2015.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you all for your predictions. You will be held to them. And I would like to say thank you to all of you for your questions and your conversation, and I'd ask you to please just acknowledge our panel for their insights and what they have to offer. And I believe, Don, I think are we gonna roll into the next one? We're gonna keep going. So I'm gonna invite your friend and mine, Don Povia, back up to the podium and to speak about the second screen. Wah, wah, wah.
Thanks, Chris. Come on up. So this is it's really a twofold panel. It's going to be about sort of social connectivity of the fans with the league, with the teams, with the players as a whole. And then the second screen experience. You're watching games. Are you watching it on your iPad? Are you conversing on an app as you're watching the game? So really the social element of sports, particularly football. We'll go through. I'm going to let my panel introduce themselves, and I really like the interaction that we had on that last panel. I hope that this panel sort of continues that conversation. I want it to be more of a conversation. So, again, I'm Don Povia. In addition to BWB, I'm a blogger with HuggingHaroldReynolds.com. So I kind of see it on all ends, social. But we'll start down the end with Brian Bassett.
Hi, I'm Brian Bassett. I write for the Jets blog, which is a part of Sportsnet New York, which is a kind of regional sports network in New York's website, TV station and website.
Sid Ziegler from Outsports, the worldwide leader in gay sports.
Wait, didn't you have Toronto? What was your slogan?
Oh, yeah,
Like,
what's your slogan?
ESPN with a snap.
I'm Amanda Rykoff. I'm a New York City-based freelance sports writer. I actually grew up here in Los Angeles, and pardon me if I'm getting over a cold, which I got as a result of getting the flu shot. So what's the lesson? Never try to do the right thing. as he moves away.
I don't want to get sick. My name's Tim Shaw. I'm a Penn State graduate. I just finished my 6th year in the NFL with the Tennessee Titans.
And I'm Bernie Kim. I write and produce pieces for Fox Sports. I currently work on Fox NFL Sunday. And I also found out that I'm an editorial consultant, which is fun. I didn't know that till yesterday.
Well, again, we got a great panel here, and I'm surprised that we're on the third panel of the day and nobody's talked about what's been the biggest sports story that's eating it up. Of course, I'm talking about Lance Armstrong's admission. No, okay. That's my attempt at humor. But let's talk a little bit about the Manti story and his lovely girlfriend sitting next to us right here. There's my second attempt at humor. But let's talk a little bit about the role that that social played in the development and now sort of the ongoing discussion of the story. So feel free to just jump right in and talk about, well, really, I guess he connected socially. But what are your overall thoughts on that as it relates to the web, to sports, and to sort of the fan interactivity with players? Go ahead, Amanda.
I think the Manti Te'o story is almost a sort of a parable for the power of social media, both in terms of building a brand, building a mythology, and then also the kind of the deconstruction and the tearing down, and how quickly that can happen, really in real time. The building up of the story and how easily information gets, content can be communicated so quickly now. I mean, you write a story and it goes out on every platform that you're connected, and then one retweet gets, the magnification and amplitude is remarkable. And I can tell you, just on Wednesday, I was actually flying here from New York. I was on Delta, so I did have Wi-Fi, and the guy next to me actually is a really super nice guy, golf fan. I was just monitoring Twitter the entire time I was flying, and I was trying to kind of explain to him why Twitter was so important to what I do as a writer and as a fan. And while I was kind of in this kind of, tutorial, the Deadspin story breaks. And it was, talk about the real-time example of a story that just, you could see it blow through the internet in a matter of seconds. The responses, and then the Notre Dame statement within less than an hour. I mean, it was just, so I think that I'm not sure that we would be, I don't know if we really would be talking about this story, if this story even existed, if it weren't for the technology that's emerged in the last 5 years
And
to allow people to connect in this way.
Not just the Twitter, but I don't know if Eric is still in the crowd, but Eric from Deadspin was talking about how the story even came about. It was a tip from somebody to tips@deadspin.com that somebody said, oh, okay, I'll follow up on that. Jack Dickey was like, oh, okay, I'll go with it. So it was sort of a fan-generated story that Deadspin ended up, peeling the layers back. Anybody else want to comment or jump in?
I just like to say, it's obvious that everything that an athlete does, whether you're, maybe have 100 followers or if you have 100,000 followers, everything you say will just be heard. It's
on the record.
Period. And it's on the record, and it is a done deal. And I think when something so big happens, it just reminds me of, why do we take everything as truth when it first happens? I think that happens a lot, where something was taken as truth when it was never truth. And once somebody's off and running with it, that's truth. And I don't care what the truth is, but that's truth once it's out there like that.
And Tim, it's interesting, and there's a lot of perspectives I want to get from you. But as a player, somebody who is active on social media, is looking to build a brand. I was talking with some folks that you're associated with, and talking about wanting to be a speaker and be motivational, and you do a lot of stuff with the community. Do you feel an obligation to be transparent, to be open? How open do you feel an obligation to be to your fans?
That's a great question. I really do feel an obligation to a certain point. And I think as an athlete, and as anybody, if you put yourself out there on social media, you want to keep a certain level of privacy. So it's a balance. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's to the point of, yes, I will tweet, I'm at the Collegiate Bowl, but I'm not going to tweet, yep, heading down to the movie at 4:55, anyone want to join
row,
me?
hi.
There's got to be some type of balance there. And even for myself in a dating scene, like, I'm not going to put out there that I'm in a relationship in a heartbeat. It's like those things need to be kept private. There's certain things, family issues, or whatever it is that you feel, wherever you feel the line is. And for myself, I feel like anyone who is following me on Twitter or who is friends with me on Facebook, those people have chosen to want to hear what I have to say. So therefore, I have freedom to say what I want, but I also have the freedom to not say what I don't want. So I feel an obligation to definitely speak my mind, but I like to just keep that line very clear.
Sid, I want to go to you about players speaking their minds, because it seems with your beat and what you cover and the focus of your site, a lot of times when players are saying something, and maybe it's not the right thing to say, but as Tim said, everything's on the record. What sort of tool is it for you as a journalist and covering social issues? How much of what players say do you kind of take with a grain of salt, or do you kind of latch onto it and develop a story from it?
Well, for us, luckily players, a lot of them have not learned what not to say on Twitter yet. So they say what's on their mind. And that's awesome because what's on their mind is often, terribly homophobic things and slurs that end up driving stories. And
It's a lot more interesting than a politically correct
It's
statement.
a little, when Tank Carter calls somebody a faggot on Twitter, like, okay, well, now we have a good story to chase after. So it's, but what's amazing is, Jordan Rogers, right? He's here, and he said some stuff previously that wasn't so hot. But when I get the opportunity to stand there and talk with him, and he explains it, it's when you're able to use more than 140 words to explain what you're saying and what you mean and the context and everything. As a journalist, you have to ask the questions, right? You can't just take somebody used this word. There might be other things behind it. He didn't use that word. But I think as a journalist, you can't just take the word. You have to chase the story.
Right.
You can break the news that he used it, but you didn't break the story necessarily. There's a story behind it.
You have to do what Deadspin did, and
right. You have to dig.
And peel back, as opposed to all these outlets that didn't do their due diligence and do some simple fact checking as well. Bernie, let's talk a little bit about working for a premier network that you do. How do they, I guess, cover the story now that the story's been broken by a site like Deadspin, and seeing a lot of the peers in the industry sort of came up short? Does that affect the way it's covered going forward?
Yeah, I talked to a couple feature producers who deal with athletes and different sports people telling their stories, and one of them said, he's going to respect his red flags that he gets in the interviews a lot more, and really, even in delicate situations, delicate stories, you have to press on. You have to follow up with questions. You can't necessarily take everything at their word. But the other argument is a lot of the features we do on Fox NFL Sunday, we don't have someone narrating it. We just have soundbite. So it's these people telling their own stories. So maybe if they tell a story that's a fabrication, that's part of the story. If they're a liar, that's part of the story. We're not adding to the piece necessarily perpetuating anything. Maybe we're showing it perpetuating, but it's still these people telling their own stories. So yes, people I think are a little bit more wary of the red flags that are going to come up and press on. But overall, it's still these people telling their stories.
Has there been talk about, I guess, the kind of moving forward policy-wise of, okay, these are people telling us stuff. What obligation do we have, or do we feel we have, of following up and fact-checking things that players that you should be able to take, at face value? Is there a policy shift of the way it's
I don't know that. I'm not really in the feature producing kind of things on with the players and whatnot. But I know that I talked to two of the producers, and there might not be a distinct policy, but there is definitely a hey, watch yourself. And it's one thing if it's a story like, hey, I found $10 on the street today, or it's another thing if you're talking about a girlfriend that doesn't exist,
right.
or a death situation, which is something you can follow up on. So it's kind of a case by case thing. I don't know that there's going to be a policy, but it's definitely open people's eyes to what people say.
And Brian, you're sort of a hybrid type guy. You're a blogger that works for a main media source. You, as a content producer, how much are you monitored? How much leeway do you have? And what's been your sort of takeaway from all this?
I guess I've been kind of knee deep in some other stuff. The Jets, I cover the Jets pretty much every day of my life, and they're in the midst of their GM search. I actually am the one who, it's not official yet, but it looks like this guy from Seattle, John Idzik, is going to be the new GM. I was the one who broke that. Before Adam Schefter did, I did. And so it's not official yet, so you know, whatever. But
You mean
but,
didn't Rick Riley break that?
but the thing is, I guess
Are
what
you
I've
yelling
learned,
at me to make sure that I'm telling everybody that Brian Bassett's the one that broke that?
That's right. Yes. Yes. So basically, but what I've learned through this is like, I don't ever want to do that stuff again. Like, I don't want to try and break stories because I was kind of wrong a couple weeks ago about something else, and it's just, it's not worth it. Like, for me personally, to put myself through that. So and kind of being in a blog, like having a blog sensibility is a lot of what I do. You know, certainly there's stuff that I hear, and I will kind of, I think I'm gonna. Or I generally do kind of put it out there softly. I'm not like stating definitively, this is the guy, or you know, they're going to sign this guy or do whatever. But there is a line where it's like, well, how much are we driving the story, or are we kind of watching the story develop? And so, like, for instance, like Manny Te'o is not a guy I really cover all that much, but certainly, you know, since kind of the bowl game, it's you can't miss it. Yeah. But you watch that, and I would say, like, you know what? If I was covering like Notre Dame kind of passively as a blogger, I would have fallen right into those stories. And so yeah, it's all about where does this come from, and how are we trusting the initial source, and do we just take the initial source as true? And so that's a part of what I do. Is part of it has to be watching the story develop, but part of it also has to be kind of cycling back on it a little bit, even a little bit, for the sake of the fans, because the fans want to know what the real story is.
Yeah, I want to go ahead, Amanda.
You know, it's funny. I feel like we may have had this conversation at maybe the first Blogs with Balls, you know, back in the basement of Stout in June of 2009, the whole notion of first versus right.
Yep.
And, you know, I think we are at that point where
I think
you'd really rather
we
be,
had it back then, and I think we've had it every event since.
and it still comes up. And I do think that I was at another event recently where we were talking about how there's so much great content out there now. And I do think that there's just a race to have a different story. And I wonder if this is just because there's so many people out there that are chasing all the different stories that maybe, you know, this just seemed like a great story to share, and the myth just kept building and building, and no one was going to think, well,
yeah.
Why would you lie about something like this?
Sure.
You know, I mean, I think that's.
I want to talk a little bit about those sensibilities. I mean, we talk about bloggers, particularly the three on the end there, and look at it, you know, kind of frame it a little differently too. Is, you know, as bloggers, as people that, you know, started as a passion. I mean, you were, you know, citizen journalists, if you will, that, you know, you're covering the Jets because you love the Jets. You cover the Yankees in 24 because you love those things. Sid, you're covering something, sports in general, but with a perspective that didn't exist, wasn't out there. But similar to the question that I posed to Tim is, you each have a couple thousand Twitter followers yourself, so there is that obligation too. But you know, you're part of the sort of public eye as well, as much as Tim is. So what you're saying, as he alluded to, you're on the record as well, not just as a journalist, but, you know, public figures with fans in your own right. I mean, do you ever look at it that way, and what you're saying, and making sure that not just from professional standards, but from personal standards, I have people who, as he said, you know, selectively click to follow me because they care about what I'm saying. So as public figures yourself, you know, what's your take on the rise of social media? I mean, the first Blogs with Balls, we were talking about Twitter, and we had to spend first 3 panels explaining to people what this new technology was, and this was like 3 or 4 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Do you want me to jump in? Yeah. I think that, you know, it's interesting because I also just, the last 2 years I was a writer I was a regular contributor to ESPNW.com. And so as a result, I was obviously under much more strict rules about what I could and couldn't say, and, you know, certainly ESPN and social media policy and all that. But so now, the last month, I've been a free agent. I still feel very strongly that even though there was a lot said about the ESPN social media policy when it came out, and I still think it was for the best in terms of kind of think before you tweet. I do think, yes, I consider myself a fan. I consider myself a writer. I consider myself, you know, a member of the Twitter community, and I have nearly 8,000 followers, and, you know, many of them are friends, some of them are family, but a lot of them are people that do look at me. I mean, it's funny how I have had to kind of change that image within the way that I think of myself. People think of me as a trusted individual in the world of sports, whether, you know, for good or ill. and they come, they send me notes, asking me if I have inside scoop on something that's going on, and I say, I don't, but they say, but they ask me. So that reminds me on a daily basis that you do need to be very careful in that way that you use Twitter to communicate even your own thoughts. Even if you're tweeting something that happened right now, you need to provide a little bit of context. You need to provide a little bit of explanation, because again, we live in a soundbite world, and as you said, the 140 characters are great, but they also can be very, very tricky because there isn't context around it. It's a moment.
Sid, I want to follow up on that. You added another layer to the Manti Te'o story. Larry Brown, who was up here earlier, I saw he reposted it and talking about sort of how things start tumbling and getting viral. But what was the impetus behind that? Was it something that you're just kind of, do you know something, or is it a hunch, or is it the same thing? Let me scratch the surface and see what happens. But again, you're adding another level of a complex level on top of an already complex story.
Sure. So I remember Wednesday afternoon going on Twitter and seeing T.O. and girlfriend and hoax, and I thought, oh my God, Terrell Owens came out of the closet. And that was my first finally. No. But I had my first instinct was I got to tweet that. Oh no, wait a second, let me go check. And then immediately my phone rang, and I got a text message, and another phone call came in. I was talking to that person. It was all these reporters calling me. Is he gay? 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 And I just said, well, I don't know, but there are so many people asking me. I got questions, high school friends emailing me. You think this guy's gay? My dad called me. Oh, I don't know. So I just wrote a story. This is the question that I'm being asked, and I've never been asked that question so many times about one athlete in 4 hours. So I just wrote an article. I said in the article, here's what's interesting. I said in the article, I don't know. I have no evidence. I know that people are asking me this question. Here's the story. This is if I was a closeted Mormon playing football at a Catholic school, I might have an impetus to create some crazy story. But what's interesting is that got turned around into Sid Ziegler says Manti Te'o is gay, right, which is not what I said. So you have to be very careful. And I kind of figured that would happen, but I knew what I had written. I did not take that position. I was just repeating what me as a reporter and a blogger was seeing and hearing. And Salon said as my theory that theory that they attributed is the most likely scenario. So, but it is interesting that people will take what you say and twist it around very quickly. And one of the things about this story that nobody's really talking about, the reason that Twitter is driving this story is because there is no story. Nobody's ahead of the story. Their team is not ahead of the story. They haven't explained the story. So everyone is just guessing about what the story is because they have not filled in any blanks.
Yeah. Tim?
Just want to say, it's funny that as a member of the media, you say that your words are twisted around, because as an athlete, that's what we worry about a lot. We worry about what we say. They're never going to get it right. They're going to twist my words. So it's interesting and actually kind of makes me feel a little better that you guys get your words twisted around too.
Hey Bernie, I want to jump to you a little bit. We're talking about journalists, and again, 3 years ago there was no one on Twitter, and I think what we want to do is sort of transition into the second part, and that's the game watching experience, the community experience, not just covering stuff, but looking at stuff in real time as it's unfolding, not just stories, but games themselves. I mean, games are inherently a social activity. Bernie, somebody mentioned the ESPN policy. It seems now that anytime you turn on a broadcast, there's the broadcaster, there's the analyst, and there's their Twitter handle right underneath them. How much is that checking off a box as opposed to encouragement for them to interact with the viewers and the fans at home?
Well, I think for Fox has really embraced the connection that fans and viewers can have with our talent. And I'll give you an example. Mike Pereira is a great use, I think, that Fox has of social media, where here's a guy that knows every rule in the book, and it's a thick book of rules, and he knows every line of that book immediately and without hesitation. And so now he has his, if you watch on a Sunday and you have a question about a call, you don't just sit there and argue with your buddies about it. You can hop on Twitter, you can directly tweet at him, Mike, what's up with this call? Was that pass interference? Was that this? Was that that? And he's in there watching all the games, and he has a social media person with him from our department, and he can answer every single question and does pretty much answer every single question that's asked to him. And so
he doesn't answer mine for some reason.
well, I'll tell Brittany to make sure that it gets relayed. But somebody's reading every one of those questions. I think that's one of the big disconnects as a fan is that there's so many rules. I don't even know, Tim, if you know every single rule in the rule book, to perfection, right? And he plays the game. So as a fan, there's still people learning the game. There's still people that just don't know the game. And so that's one way that Fox uses social media to connect the fans.
I think he's a great example, and he's one that I was going to bring up. And, I guess I had questions as to the authenticity of it. Was this, again, just window show? Does he do it? Is it sort of scripted, produced in the back where, okay, here's a call, let's kind of, all right, so-and-so, get your buddy to tweet this question.
Well, I mean, no. He gets legitimate, believe me,
Yeah.
the NFL fans are the most passionate, in our country and around the world. And he'll get legitimate questions. I'll tweet him from a game because I could go out there and ask him, but I've tweeted him out the tuck rule before and he's responded. But yes, somebody is sitting there, legitimately reading him all the questions when he has a second, and he'll tell him he'll tell Brittany what to say. So maybe he's not typing him back, but he's certainly engaging.
Brian, as a guy who watches as a fan and blogs as a fan, but also works for a media company, anyone you see either within the organization or either your media organization or the football organization that you cover that's really stuck out of using some of these things effectively in game?
In game, it's a good question. I mean, there are some great. I'm just looking at it from the Jets lens. There are definitely some fans who have really risen up, to kind of take the mantle of talking about the game as it's going on. And there are definitely a couple people. The Jets organization is interesting. They were one of the first teams that really kind of moved to Twitter. Kerry Rhodes, when he was with the Jets.
Thank you, Gary V. Right?
Gary V. If just look up Gary V. He's a huge Jets fan. So there's definitely a lot of fans who are into Twitter and that sort of thing. But I guess there's no one that really sticks out. I mean, I certainly use it in game to talk about things as they're going on, opinions, that sort of thing. And it's a fantastic way to do that. If you're not at the game or you're not, at a sports bar or whatever, it's a fantastic use of the tool.
We've talked a lot about Twitter. I mean, pretty predominantly it's been about Twitter. I mean, is that sort of the de facto? I mean, I know a lot of, you get solicitations as bloggers. I mean, I get them from apps and different things. Is this is like Twitter for the sports fan. Mm-hmm. And my answer is always, well, isn't Twitter for the sports fan? What do you need something? I mean, is Twitter, because of its nature, sort of that go-to and because of the user base, is there anything else out there? I know Brian and I both use Sports the Apper, trying it out. But again, it's integrated with Facebook and Twitter, the two fallbacks. Is there anything besides Twitter that connects fans like that during the game?
The only other thing I've really heard of is, I don't even know if it's still, I think it might have gone belly up, but it was, I think Charlotte, there was a company called Other Screen, and they did everything, not just sports, but I believe it was also Golden Globes or that sort of thing, and they kind of had an ongoing discussion. But I think that's the thing, right? Is we're just seeing now, like you're saying, this is very nascent technology, and so you've got Twitter, and then you've got amazing things. The first time I saw DirecTV for iPhone, I thought it was elven magic or something. It was absolutely amazing, to see. Oh my God, I can watch this while I'm walking with my wife through the park. Literally, I could do that. And so I think that what's going to have to happen is, right, there are certainly applications that are out there, but it's you have these kind of core functionalities of games, scores, that updates of the scoring and kind of box score. You've got messaging, Twitter, Sports Yapper, those sorts of things, video, And then, but I don't think we've seen anything that's really really started to combine those, or broadcast radio stuff. But there needs to be tools like ESPN, if they're not working on it now, like they should be working on a way where you can listen to the game, through ESPN radio, but also be tweeting through the same application.
Bernie,
that's the sort of thing.
Yeah, Bernie, from a network perspective that certainly has a contract broadcast games. Is that seen as sort of competition to, I guess, TV rights and exclusivity on that end, or is it being embraced as, well, this is the next wave, it can be complementary, we might as well get out in front of it?
It's not seen as a threat in any way. I mean, nothing beats watching the game, but it's something that we're embracing as complementary. It's absolutely to get information out, to get maybe little side things that our hosts have to say while they're watching the games, while our pregame or halftimes aren't on the air. It's certainly used as something complimentary, or even just advancing. Maybe Jay Glazer will have a story in the pregame, and it gets addressed during the game that he's talking about. Then that can get retweeted out. It's definitely embraced as a complimentary tool.
Yeah, something just to pick up, Twitter obviously is, to me, it's like the ultimate sports bar. It's the online sports bar. You don't have to deal with all the hassles of the sports bar, where you can still share your opinions and hear the opinions of others that maybe you don't want to hear. But it's just, that to me was my kind of aha moment about 4 years ago when I really started jumping in. But I think there's always this question of how to monetize the fan engagement aspect. I mean, obviously none of us are being paid per tweet or per retweet or per @reply.
Not yet.
Something that I've been kind of
not yet. I'm working on that in my professional
Something that
life,
I've
so
actually
Tim,
been
give me a
kind of
call.
checking out lately is a new app called Preplay. It's based in New York, and they actually have deals with MLB and with the NHL, and that one is actually going to launch next week, right after the season actually starts. And it's predictive gaming, so it's an app on right now it's just for the iPhone and iPad. I think they're launching Droid next month, but it's basically a way for you to challenge both yourself and your friends to predict what's going to happen in the game. So you can watch, if you're watching the NFL playoff game, if you're watching, if you think if it's 2nd and 6 for the 49ers, at the Atlanta 45, what's the play? Is it going to be a running play for less than 5 yards? Is it going to be
Sounds like a gambling app.
Is it going to be a turnover? You can then double down and say, if it's a turnover, is it going to be a fumble or an interception? And it's actually it's really cool because you can play your you can play your friends, you can play strangers, and you can also chat. And the other thing that I think is actually, to me, that again, it's all about the monetization aspect, and to me, where I think they really it's very cool. It's real time in conjunction with the game. So when the game goes to commercial, the Preplay game goes to commercial with it, with an ad from one of their sponsors. And then, of course, there's click-through technology, which is great for the sponsor. So I do think we are just now, to me, this is the first one that I've seen, because I've been sent, how many times have you been sent, emails or pitches from all these things? You're like, I would never use this. But I'm a fantasy sports addict. Yeah. And to me, this is like almost a next level of fantasy, because once you've set your lineups and you're just, you're freaking out about why do they insist on throwing the ball, when you have Adrian Peterson as your running back? Right. You can at least now get engaged in a different way.
They got to get Aaron Schatz on board with this thing, because start overlaying the statistics on it.
Can I ask you a question? Hasn't NBC tried that before? Didn't they have a predict and it just didn't work? Well, people didn't gravitate toward it. I thought they tried it.
Was it on computer or like app?
It was your laptop, I think. So, or maybe that's.
Maybe that was like less.
One thing, and I'll switch gears to a different sport, that I found was like immensely valuable, and I wanted to get a perspective from Tim, from an NFL standpoint. Was I'm not a NASCAR fan. I'll give it a shot. I don't hate the sport, some people might call it, but I was at a friend's house, guy from Carolina, real big Dale Jr. fan, and through a paid service, he essentially had on his laptop the radio communications between the pit crew, the team, and the driver. So as we're watching it on TV, you hear the conversation that his favorite driver is having with his team, and having my friend there, having this there, explaining strategy, bump drafting, all this stuff that I never knew existed. It helped me understand the sport a little better by pulling things back. Can something like that, networks, teams, would that even be receptive in the NFL? Because I know fans want more access, and you have these mic'd up segments. But if there was something where Tim was mic'd up throughout the whole game, and you can go and sort of listen to Tim throughout the game and hear the game from the players' perspectives, sounds like a great idea. Networks, I think, would be into it, but would players want to give that? That's giving strategy away, giving things like that. How much can we supplement in terms of viewing content in a sport like that you play?
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love a good mic'd up session where helmets are crashing and they're talking crap to each other in between the play? And it's funny because I'll watch an NBA game and I'm like, I want to know what that coach is saying to that ref right now.
Well, you just got James Dolan. Did you see the pictures with the big mic things, trying to figure out?
Yeah, I mean, so those are things that we want to know as fans, and then of course, you just can't give away strategy. So NFL players, we get mic'd up maybe for our local show or even for a national show, but you just can't. The play calling, the terminology that we use, all those things are just going to be eaten up by opponents, and so. To have a filter, I just don't see a way that you could do it.
Yeah.
Filtering what can be heard and what can't. I mean, that's why you have somebody who has to edit it before it can be shown on TV.
And if it's on tape delay, what's the point?
Exactly. But I mean, the idea is amazing. Fans would love it, and even like I said, me for another sport, I would love that as well. But it's especially football, and I don't know about other sports, but especially football. Our terminology is so key. Yeah. That if the other team knows a word that I'm saying, they're going to know what we're doing. And those are just things that we can't give away.
Right. Well, forget the players. The coaches are so paranoid that they cover their mouths when they speak in case someone is reading their lips. So mic'd up players with plays. I mean, I can't imagine.
Is there something, is there something on the horizon or something that's been booted around or something that you've seen, whether with Fox or another network that's sort of groundbreaking, or something comparable to what NASCAR was doing? Like, has anybody done something to enhance that viewing experience by using digital assets?
I don't know that that's in the works. If it increases the engagement, I'm sure it has maybe been tossed around, but I don't know specifically if that's been talked about.
The one place that I wonder if you could mic up the refs. I mean, there's actually more and more interest in the officiating of these games. I mean, they're not going to overhear strategy, but I wonder if people would be interested in hearing the refs talk. I don't know. It's
we should have tried
possible.
that out with the replacement refs. And
yeah, exactly.
Saw how that went. Tim, one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to the crowd. You're playing the game, and obviously you're not communicating in real time. But as you're playing the game, and you're playing against the Jets, and Brian's over there saying, "Oh man, that Tim Shaw sucks. I'm glad, he's on the Titans and not on the Jets." We talk about players.
Tim, I've never said that. Just want to be clear, I've never said
I'm going to check your Twitter timeline when we get.
But as a player, you personally, maybe someone you don't have to mention names or anything. How much do you pay attention to what they're saying? Say you miss a key tackle. It's easy to say, no, I don't care. But human curiosity, don't you go and say, all right, what happened on that play? What were they saying at that?
Well, it's really funny actually, because when we were playing the Jets, and I started the last 5 games of the season for us, and which I'm typically I'm our special teams captain, so that's typically what I do and what I've done so well over my career. But I got an opportunity to get some real good defensive time this year. So we were playing the Jets. It's Monday Night Football, and I'm starting. I'm in man coverage with one of their players, and I'm in great position. Sanchez, who's threw 4 picks in the game, throws the. I have the guy covered so well that I'm like, he won't throw the ball. Well, he throws it right over my ear, where if I would have just turned and looked, I would have ran off with it. But he threw it. The guy catches it, walked into the end zone, and I was right here on the guy. Right. And after the game, and this normally doesn't happen to me because I normally am not in the spotlight that much, but after the game, I had some very hateful and nasty things on my Twitter line, like, thanks for,
because
way to give up that touchdown, and we won the game, by the way. But I had these, I had these, and people, they care so much. So I actually I like that. They wrote me these things like, hey, thanks so much for giving up that touchdown. You know, just like hurtful thing, but like even like nasty
I mean,
words
can you
and stuff.
respect the fact that, I mean, there's people that'll just put Tim Shaw, piece of crap.
Oh, absolutely.
Or the ones that say, okay, at T Shaw, truth. You know, they're telling you, they know you have that better chance of seeing it because they're at messaging you.
Sure.
So
It's
you get a little respect for them because at least they man up and say it to your quote unquote face.
You know what? Those are the fans, so they have their opinion, and that's great. But at the end of the day, yeah, I messed up. You know, the guy scored a touchdown. But guess what? He gets paid too, and this is a tough game. You know, so I'm going to make some great plays. I'm going to make some bad plays. Tell me how you feel about it. That's fine. I'm going to be a man and take it. I mean, if you want to hurt my feelings, I might shed a tear or so. But I mean, you know, I like that. The fans care so much. They want to tell us how they feel. But I not that I went back and checked, but like it's just there.
They're coming to you, right?
Yeah, not that I had to go and find it. It was there, and a play specifically during the game. They'll tell you how they feel about it. You know, and the reverse is opposite is the same as well. You know, I block a punt. Oh, you just get nothing but love on Twitter. So it goes with the good, it goes with the bad.
Have you
and just take
have
it.
you ever blocked a fan for crossing the line?
I've never blocked a fan. No.
I've been blocked by Thurman Thomas. I'll just put it out there.
What
Jonathan
did
Vilma.
you say to
Jonathan
him?
Vilma. He was saying something about Merriman, and I made a comment about Merriman's substance issues, and you know he put me on the top 5 of his idiot club, and then blocked me.
That's quite an honor.
We're gonna open it up. Anybody have any questions? Go right ahead.
I freelance with sports social media events, so I'm looking forward to this panel. I have a couple of points and then a question for everybody. As far as apps go, there's the Paul Allen back sports stream that's becoming
Yes.
that has
Yes,
just
I've heard a lot about that one, yes.
into play. I've heard a lot on Twitter about Biggle. It sounds somewhat similar to what you were talking about, Amanda. Sid, I'm wondering, watching that whole thing unfold on Wednesday, I'm wondering if you were getting all those questions because people were perpetuating that on Twitter, and then my actual question for everybody is, what is your perspective on Twitter wars, be it between media, or between players, or just in general?
Well, the specific question, my dad's not on Twitter. So it was coming from, I think, and the first person to call me I know is not on Twitter. So I think they were just, I don't know, their gaydar was going off for whatever reason. And I think part of it's the lack of the story. So Twitter or people's minds were filling in the blanks that Teo still has not filled in himself. Twitter wars, I don't know. I get, it's funny, I get called horrible things on Twitter, and I egg it on. It's kind of funny to me. So I engage wholeheartedly in them and just see how far I can get them to take it.
Tim, as a player, I mean, I joked around about blocking anybody. I mean, how much do you engage back, or is it just kind of a slippery slope? You start, and then it just keeps perpetuating itself?
I try to be careful. Even just somebody saying, "Hey, great to see you," or "Good," you know, it's like even my friends. I try not to like send out so many personal that only is directed at one person tweets. You know, so
on a public forum. Like
yeah,
that.
exactly. Where it's like I'm saying, "Hey, good to run into you today at the airport." You know, like. To me, that's not what Twitter's for. So I try not to do that. I do it occasionally. I try to keep it to a minimum. But as far as Twitter wars, you know, you start a conversation with someone, and then it's like, next thing you know, you're on your timeline. You're like, God, this guy's filling up my timeline with unnecessary stuff. Like, no one wants to read that. So I try to keep it to a minimum. I have got caught up a couple times, you know, arguing with somebody, but
Learned your lesson.
Yeah.
You have any other questions? Good.
I think the technology in the third screen, is there anything in the works? I mean, I'm a firefighter, and we have helmet cameras. I've always wondered, is there a way the NFL can make technology where you have a point of view from a player?
It's a good question. I'm just going to repeat it. The question was, in terms of technology and some of the things we discussed, what about the idea, he said he's a firefighter and they have helmet cams, about the NFL implementing something player perspective, helmet cams. And Bernie, I'll let you start. I would ask, you know, is that something that the networks would drive or the league? What do you think?
You know, I think it's for Fox. Fox is always looking for the a different perspective on the game, and we're always putting microphones places, cameras places, like we did for baseball. I think if it hasn't been explored already, it's something that they'd have to get the league to sign off on. I'm sure our ops people love the idea of putting cameras out there, but I think that's a league discussion, more so to get them to sign off on that kind of thing. Maybe Tim would know if they try to do that.
Greg.
I don't know if we tried, but I think we would like it. I don't think the players would have a problem with it.
As long as it doesn't obstruct or
Yeah,
interfere
and
with.
with technology, you should be able to. You can make that happen. Right?
The one thing I do wonder, and I think Dee will be talking about it probably a little bit in a minute here, would it in some way make the player safety issues worse by having that instead of padding or whatever would be there? So I think that would obviously be a big issue for the NFL to have to sign off on.
Yeah, why add? I mean, talk about layers of of complexity. Yeah. Great. The question was Twitter wars, if you will, about who broke a story and who's sourcing whom. Bernie, we talked a little bit last night about, you got a guy like Jay Glazer and a guy like Adam Schefter, right? Chances are they could very well be, working on the same story, and then who broke it first because they're time-stamped. And then when somebody broke it first, ESPN got some flack for the fact that they'll say, sources say, and implying that it's their sources when it might in fact be Jay Glazer. So the question was sort of thoughts in general on, I guess, protocol and just observations.
Well, I think journalistic protocol would be to credit who credit it and don't just say source just so you can say you have a little bit of a piece of it. In terms of Glazer, he, in my mind, is the best at breaking stories, and he knows exactly when a story is his, and he has no problem giving out credit to an Adam Schefter or a Chris Mortensen or whoever. So, from the Fox side, he knows when ESPN is taking one of his scoops, slapping source on it, and not giving him due credit. So for Fox, we have no problem giving out credit where credit is due. And I was actually kind of proud of ESPN for properly accrediting Deadspin for this awesome story that's come out this week.
I think it's absolutely a level of currency. I know because I cover the Jets. Beat reporters will, not all the time, but they'll say, "Hey, I was the one who had that first," and they'll want me to change what I've written on my site. And I'm like, "Well, I just was in my timeline. I'm sorry. Didn't realize that you did it 10 minutes before the other person." Because the PR person for the Jets called you first, whatever. So I guess my thought is, for them, it's big to have it up there, and obviously you're going to get more followers from doing it. So I agree. I certainly see the importance of it. The fans generally don't care; they just want it to be right for the most part. They don't care who got it first, and there's so many places they can get it from. They just want it to be right. But if you're that person, absolutely, you're going to get more cred and more follower currency for breaking it first. So you have an incentive to do it.
Okay. Well, before we break, and D. Smith is going to come up and talk about player safety in the NFL and wrap us up, and then we'll have some lunch. I want to thank everyone for being here. But before we break our panel, just want to go down the line and we'll call it Follow Thursday. If you could recommend one player, one organization, executive. Who would you recommend following? The Jets.
Yeah, I kind of like Greg Aiello. I know him. I like him. And sorry if you guys don't. I don't know what the relationship is, but okay. I get a lot of my news from him. So.
His news, right?
What?
No, okay.
Yeah. No. I get a lot of my oh, that's okay. Got it. Sorry.
Amanda? No.
I'll just say, no one's really going to care here, but there's a great guy who he follows specifically Jets social media, and his name, it's E_man, M-A-N, E-man. And he's awesome. And he's a huge Jets fan, and he goes to every game, and he does tailgates, and he's very into social media. He's great. And he's a friend, so I like following him and kind of conversing with him. And George Atala.
I'll give you time to
Come
think.
back to me. I'm really
I got a guy. His name's Anthony Adams. He went to Penn State with me, and he also played for the Bears for about 5 years, played for the 49ers 4 or 5 years. This guy is one of the funniest guys I've ever been around, seen on Twitter, Facebook. He's now making videos of like the most random things. He's a big 300-pound guy, and he's doing like 300-pounders like Dancing with the Stars. Like he's doing like, 300-pound gymnastic. Like he's just doing random funny stuff, and he just hilarious.
Check it out, Bernie.
I wish I had a non-Homer answer, but I want to go back to Mike Pereira, because I'm just an NFL fanatic, and so I need to know why a rule is a certain way, or there's so many little things that happen in a game that I want explained, and he is the best source of information for that. So I just think he's a great follow as a fan.
All right, Amanda, you're on the
It's funny. I wish we actually were having this conversation last week, because I've been following this guy since before it was actually the biggest thing to do. But Tim Burke at Deadspin, Bubba Prague. I mean, he is also a friend, but what he does, and I mean, when he's not breaking these amazing stories, when he's not doing that, he watches every game and does screen caps of these moments of, like whether it's a facial expression or, does a great, he gets those up so quickly. And to me, it complements the in-game viewing experience by providing it. So when you see that and you say, oh my God, I need that, and I need to show it to everyone, within 10 minutes, he's got the GIF up of that play that you were just talking about. And so it helps enhance that, when you say that's a Mark Sanchez thing.
Butt fumble.
Exactly. That's so Jets or hashtag Mark Sanchez thing. What that was.
We actually joked about John Boyce from SB Nation hijacking the Twitter hash mark, because he tends to do that. I like him. I like Dan McQuaid is a Philly guy. And talk about gifts, like something happens in a Phillies game, like, there's like Shane Victorino falling over himself 3 times trying to throw the ball. Like Dan's got it up there right away. But I'm going to go with on Instagram. I like following guys on Instagram. I think the NBA teams do it very well in showcasing their brands. Talk about Philly guys. I like, for some reason, it's kind of like a train wreck, but Deshaun Jackson's like Instagram stuff. It's like, I don't know. It's feeling like yelling like, get healthy, get on the field and play, and stop doing this stupid stuff. But the best part of Instagram is like, I think that the people writing that and the comment threads that come of like, why are you taking this stupid picture? You guys stink, blah, blah, blah. So I think any athlete's Instagram stuff is just as entertaining as anything else. So can we have a round of applause for our panelists and all the panelists throughout the day? Thank you certainly to the NFL Players Association and their continued support of what we do, and obviously we continue to support what they do. So thank you for having us, and I'll bring George up here, and I think he'll introduce Dee.
I'm going to make this relatively quick because Dee's over there typing an email probably to somebody at the league office about following Greg Aiello. Sorry to the NFL intern that's watching us right now, making something crazy. Again, I'm George Atala. I want to introduce the executive director of the NFL Players Association, DeMaurice Smith. This is the second time he will be addressing the BWB group. The first time was in Washington, D.C. A year and a half or 2 years ago or so. It's a unique opportunity for us and for him to really talk. And I think he's most interested in doing really an informal conversation with you guys about health and safety in football. A lot of us know and have read about things like concussions, but do we know about other issues related to health and safety in football? Workers' compensation, injury protection benefits, things that you may not read about. So without further ado, my friend and the executive director, DeMaurice Smith.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, don't know if it works, but no, it's all right. You may use this one instead? Yeah, no, go right ahead. All right. Can you hear me now? No. All right. Let's do this one. First and foremost, thanks for coming here today. You know, I enjoy anything that relates to Greg Aiello. So it's always a wonderful opportunity to talk to you guys. We are a big believer in social media, as you know, from the way in which we made a decision to interact with our fans both before the lockout and through the lockout. We spent a tremendous amount of time reaching our fans and talking about our message through, I guess, what used to be called non-traditional media. Today, we wanted to talk a little bit about the issue of player safety. It's great to see our reps, and when we have young men like Tim, who not only believe in the things that make the National Football League fun, but they're willing to take upon themselves the mantle of leadership and fight for the things that are important to players. Those are things that makes my job not only enjoyable, but incredibly easier. So you know that a couple of things. One, I always answer every question, of course, unless I don't. With respect to questions from the crowd, I'm really a big believer in talking with people and not talking at them. You know what the seminal or pivotal issues are right now in the National Football League as they relate to player safety. In 2009, when I took this job, the head of the league's concussion committee was a rheumatologist. When we made decisions that we were going to fight for a world of better health and safety in the National Football League, we did that not only by taking issues to Congress, but also having our players and in many cases our star players talk about the issues of health and safety with people like you. Even when we were dealing with issues like the 18-game schedule, one thing that I will say and that I would thank each and every one of you is it was really you folks in social media who raised the issue of health and safety in the context of an 18-game schedule, and you did so even more so than what we would call mainstream media. So from our perspective of health and safety, there will never be a time in the National Football League where members of this union, and particularly me, are going to be happy and content with where we are on the issue of health and safety. Our job as a union, our job as a representative of the men who play the game and the families who support them, and even the fans who enjoy the game, as well as those who play in college and play in youth sports, our role is to make sure that we are constantly challenging and exhorting the National Football League to do a better job. We cannot be in a world where we think that there is some sort of state of nirvana where everything is going to be perfect. We have seen developments in health and safety across sport as well as in the greater community because people took it upon themselves to not be happy with status quo. So that's our job. And with that, I hope that the portion of me talking at you is over. And that you guys will want to engage in an interactive discussion of how we go forward. Cool? Yes, sir. The fan of Greg Aiello. I mean, look, oh, you didn't start off there. My feelings are hurt. You know how sensitive I am. But yeah, go ahead. Question?
Friends of mine who hate football
Yeah.
say that this is going to bring the end of the NFL. There will be flag football leagues and tackle football is coming to an end.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think that, the question was that he has friends who hate football who believe that this new emphasis on health and safety is going to bring an end to football and that, and the lawsuits are going to bring the end into football. I guess that makes sense if you live in a room with no air. I mean, that just is not a possibility. I mean, think back historically. We had a president who intervened in the dominant football sport of his day when Teddy Roosevelt made decisions to make football safer. The reason that he stepped in addition to being an avid outdoorsman and a person who believed in physical fitness was more people were dying on the football field playing college football than in any other sport. Historically, in that arc of history, you saw the end to things like flying wedges Moving forward into the modern day, the things that made some or gave some football players Hall of Fame careers, you can't do anymore. You can't horse collar. You can't do cutback chop blocks. You have made and you have seen changes or the evolution of changes in the National Football League when it came to safety that have, in some respects or in most respects, made the game better. So no, if you are dealing in a world where people are making conscious efforts to make the game safer, I don't think that those things come at the expense of the game itself. So I'll stop there. I think it's an interesting philosophical question to take it to its logical conclusion, and I think that's one that would just be interesting to think about. What if it did? No, I don't think it would, but if someone came to me and I have to face Tim each and every day when I see him as a rep, and someone said to me, what would you do? Would you stop trying to make his job safer because you think that people will stop watching? I can tell you that I am going to advocate to make his job safer. Make sense? Yes, sir.
There's a lot being done to change rules and make the players safe on the field, but what about helping players protecting players from themselves? In other words, there's a story about Jason Taylor in the Miami Herald about what he did to get himself ready for Sunday. Players have that mentality of do anything I can to play to suit up on Sunday. So what is the Players Association doing to maybe educate players that can't just have injections all the time?
Sure.
And you have a life to live after.
Sure. Each and every player, and again, those would be great questions to ask of our players themselves. But he'll tell you when I was in that Tennessee Titans locker room, I tend to give the same speech that I give to every team when we see them. We talk about a third to a quarter of the individuals in that locker room are going to be in need of a major hip, knee joint replacement by the time that they're 60 years old. They hear that the reported injury rate in the National Football League last year was 4,500 reported injuries, while we only have about 1,800 active players who are playing the game. And we also tell them that the injury rate in the National Football League is 100%. So to your question about making sure that the players understand the business model that they're in, we are pretty blunt with them. The business model that they are in is one that asks them to trade their physicality, their mental ability in exchange for compensation. That's the business model. Now, to take it to the next level, the thing that we make clear is that while they have an obligation to look out for themselves when it comes to filing for workers' comp, understanding the ramifications of the game that they're playing, we also make it abundantly clear that we as a union have an obligation to make and keep their employer accountable. If any one of you gets hurt at your job, we call that a workplace accident, and you have the opportunity of availing yourselves of workers' comp protections, and that is something that has been in the American business way of life for decades. When our players get hurt on the field or at practice in the National Football League, I refuse to call that an accident. It's not. I'm standing in front of a hard-charging Ray Lewis, as comical as that would look, whatever is going to happen after Ray Lewis hits me is not an accident. It is a necessary and foreseeable consequence of me being in that moment in time where we have a collision. Yet, in the National Football League, we have our teams engaged in a systematic effort to deny our players workers' comp. So I hear at times a number of comments about this, about whether we need to do more to make sure that players are protected from themselves. We really need to have a changed conversation and start asking and demanding, when is the National Football League going to be accountable for the employees that it employs? For example, there should be no one here who is surprised about the level of pain-killing medication that is dispensed by doctors in the National Football League. At the beginning of this year, we made an effort to ensure that those players received informed consent from the doctors about the medications that were being given to them. My guess is if any of you ask a handful of players and ask them the simple question, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, but if you ask a handful of players about whether a doctor sits down with them before they get an injection, about whether a doctor explains to them about the consequences to their liver, their kidneys, their joints, their brain, about the medications that are being prescribed to them, I dare say that most players will tell you that they have not been getting informed consent from the doctors. And that is not a broad indictment for every doctor in the National Football League. It is just simply a fact of what we know. So if we are in a world where a part of this business is that in order to complete the job, you have to receive pain-killing medication, it seems to me that one question you have to ask is, what's being asked of the players of the National Football League? So, look, some teams, and I should probably say many teams, responded to that request for informed consent in a positive way. I can tell you that one team here in California, the San Diego Chargers, did not respond to that in a positive way. So when a doctor responds to our request for informed consent by sliding a piece of paper in front of a player and saying, if you want to know about Toradol, you need to look it up on Wikipedia. I mean, it sounds like the punchline of a joke. It just happens to be real. And when you take it to the next extent, that the doctor who filled out that form then wanted the player to sign a waiver of liability for anything that resulted from that shot, the unfortunate, sad joke continues. And then when you find out that the same doctor who told them to look it up on Wikipedia and asked to not be held liable, was he himself found to be liable for medical malpractice twice in the last 5 years, it's not even funny anymore. It's sad. So when we go to the National Football League and we say that the players of the National Football League deserve a doctor, a better doctor than one who has been found liable for malpractice twice and one who has been the subject of a DEA investigation, and the National Football League does not remove that doctor, do we have an issue of players not being able to protect themselves, or do we have an issue of the inability of the league office to hold their member teams accountable? Make sense? Yes, sir.
Piggyback off that, where do you stand on HGH right now, and has it been compensated by lateral investigation
With Mr. No, I don't see any complication from that. I'm sorry. I think I know what you're talking about. I'm sorry. I understand. You're talking about the process. Yes. Look, HGH and our issue with HGH is a rather simple one. If the National Football League players are going to be held accountable to a standard, if the league is going to use a standard by which they are going to conclude that a player has taken or unlawfully taken HGH supplements, we want to know what the standard is. WADA refuses to turn over that standard. So in an effort to bridge the gap, it was the players who said, fine, WADA doesn't want to turn over that standard. Let's work together with the National Football League to create the standard. So we offered the league the idea of doing a population study, which they agreed to do. We suggested doctors, they suggested doctors to conduct the population study. They picked a doctor. We picked their doctor in order to try to get something done, and their doctor withdrew. Well, for the league to then put a lawyer up to say that it's the union delaying the implementation of HGH testing, I know that this particular lawyer has at times a problem with something that we call the truth, but it's unbelievable to me that they have chosen to not abide by the very process they agreed to do. So, look, we have now since seen Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association come to an agreement on HGH testing that allows any aggrieved player to challenge the validity of the science, or in your case, the process by which he has been adjudicated to have unlawfully taken a performance-enhancing drug. So far, the National Football League wants to prevent a player from doing exactly that. So it seems to me that if the National Football League was willing to embrace the same process and the same scientific challenges available to a player that Major League Baseball has adopted, we'd probably be a lot closer to having HGH in the National Football League than we are now. But I will tell you what we won't do. We will not give in to any person or any process who wants to run around the collective bargaining process. We're not going to let anybody bully our players into accepting a standard that they can't see or touch or challenge. And we certainly will not subject ourselves, our players, to a challenge that is unreviewable. So it seems to me that the process of fairness that I was taught as a prosecutor is one that's good for the country. It seems to me if it's good enough for the United States, it's probably pretty good for the National Football League.
So the NFL, what you're saying is the NFL would prefer that Sherman and the guy from the Giants because they actually had a prescription.
Right.
Not having a
No, what I'm saying is both of those, and again, I don't get into really individual cases, but both of those cases were cases that went to a neutral arbitrator who overturned the punishment that was imposed. It took us a long time in the bounty investigation to have our players exonerated. It took months. And it took months when every newspaper, virtually every outlet in America had already come to a conclusion that there was a group of marauding thugs putting hits on players. Well, I can tell you after reading every bit of transcript that was heard by the person who heard that case, I now know that that wasn't true. Well, we believe that history is a pretty good teacher. So I don't want, and I know our players don't want to be subject to a system that they can't review, and they don't want to be subject to punishment where you don't have the ability to at least stand up like a man and challenge it. Wow, did I stun everybody into unbridled science? Let me get the person in the back. Yeah, I haven't seen a proposal from the league on that, and or folks who have covered us in the lockout, I don't spend a whole heck of a lot of time guessing about things that might be coming from the National Football League. We live in the world where if they want to put forward a proposal, we'll take a look at it, because as we now know, the devil is sometimes in the details.
Just curious.
I'm curious too.
Are younger players more responsive, maybe, than some of the older players who've been
in the league?
Yeah, and seen the changes in terms of safety and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess, and not to answer a question with a question, but responsive to.
Responsive to the new rules or fines on hits or things.
Oh, that's one of those generalization questions. I don't know. I will tell you this. The older players in the National Football League know what it's like to go through a training camp with two-a-days versus going through a training camp with no two-a-days. If you talk to a retired player, any retired player, they will now tell you that they probably could have played another 2 years not having gone through two-a-days. So the culture and the understanding of what players need to do in order to play the game at a very high level, I think is something that's always evolving. Look, there are teams in the National Football League who do an incredibly good job about protecting their players and doing things that are smart. Our challenge as the union is we have to propose rules and we have to insist on levels of accountability that are applicable to everyone. If every team in the National Football League did things like some teams, we wouldn't have a problem. But the fact is there is at times a wide disparity between the way in which teams approach issues like wellness, like workers' compensation, like informed consent. Our job is we have to come up with ways to make sure those things apply to all teams. And what you find from players who are playing the game today, do they believe that the game is a safe game? The game has inherent risk. Do they know that we have done things to make the game safer? Yes.
Can you specify any specific teams that are model franchises in terms of?
That's one of those questions. I could. I won't. But I could. That's actually, to be dead honest and just be blunt, and for folks who were with our, went to our blog event at the office last year, I tend to be a little too blunt about things sometimes. There might be a need to do that. One, I think that you could probably articulate a legitimate fan interest or knowledge interest in the teams who do it both well and the teams who do it who don't do it so well. I think that we spend, and a lot of people, and I do read your blogs, that sometimes, I get the rap for the only time I have something to say is when I'm bashing somebody. There are a lot of people who do a great job, and I think, we'll talk about it, and George will talk about it, and we'll think about it. Maybe it's time for us to reach out and single out teams who do a really great job, because there are people who do. And that one, I just have to tell you that maybe sometime down the road, I'll answer that question. Fair?
Fair.
Okay.
Had you been pushing for uniform field conditions or levels of service before, and does the FedEx field issue
Yeah, I mean, on the FedEx field issue, again, that's just one of those individual topics that we don't spend a whole lot of time focusing on sort of episodic events. We look at things. We've always been interested in field services. When we, for example, we sent members of the union to Minnesota after the stadium collapsed and the players had to play outdoors. There was concerns about the quality of that field that they were going to be playing on, so we sent experts and members from the union before that game to look at that field. So at times we have always taken steps to ensure things like field services. Over the next 2 years, is there going to be a heightened emphasis on that? Yes. And I felt that the way that the CBA was structured under the old system didn't necessarily give us the tools that we now have. I think that now the way that we have an accountability and care commission provision under the CBA, our abilities to conduct investigations pursuant to Article 50 will enhance our ability to look at what we call workplace safety issues. I mean, look, I'm sure that our professional players wouldn't call what I did in high school playing football, but the game is something that we enjoy. What our players do on the field, we view from a workplace safety standpoint. So the questions that we are going to start asking and demanding answers for is the surface that they are playing on? Is the workplace that they are playing on the safest possible surface? And that might be an answer that changes depending on where teams are playing. But we're comfortable that we've identified the right experts, and in the same way that we looked at issues of concussions, I believe workplace safety is going to probably be the most important issue for the next decade. Yes, sir.
Is there any safety technology on the horizon that we can look forward to? Possibly, whether it be with helmets or with the...
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and yeah, are there things that that we've seen that could show promise for improving safety? And yeah, we've seen a lot of developments, and we've certainly seen a lot of, lack of a better word, prototypes for things that are interesting. Everything from helmets with cooling systems and shoulder pads with cooling systems in them, believe it or not, to reduce body heat, whether it's helmets that displace, or ideas about helmets that displace energy in a different way. Yeah, we've seen a lot of those things. I think that one of the things that we need to do a better job on the union side is to ask the question of what we can do to spur innovation in those areas. Because I'm really interested in the things that aren't yet created. And yes, we take a hard look at a lot of the products that people want to talk about using in the National Football League. But to me, the real issue of innovation along the lines of safety is, what are the things that don't exist, and how do we spur that level of innovation for people to be interested in it? One of the things, and I'd like to talk about this just for a second, that under the CBA, we created $100 million in player money that we have set aside over the next 10 years for research on health and safety. I don't know of another enterprise, entity, league, or sports union that has chosen to take salary money and dedicate it to research. And I'm proud of our members because it was their idea to do it. So one of the things that we have done, we sent out RFPs to some of the best medical and research facilities in the country. We're going to be talking about a couple of them that clearly were the best, but one of the things that we will be doing with those universities is asking them to dive headfirst, for the lack of a better colloquialism, into the issue of innovation and how do we do things in a better, smarter way. The way the deal is structured now in the National Football League, we believe that we have the tools necessary. Do I think there's things we can do better? Yes. But this issue of accountability and credibility, to me, is the one that has started to dominate the discussion boards and the blog boards. And I'd be interested in hearing from you guys about that. As a father, as a guy who's coached both of his kids, yes, do I talk to mothers and fathers who have concerns about playing our sport? Yeah. And I think that the day that we can get to where we can tell them on the college and youth level that we in the National Football League are doing everything we can to make the game as safe as possible, that's something that we know trickles down to college. That's something that we know trickles down to youth football. Cool. What a quiet, reverent bunch. I mean, we're going to have to start serving more alcoholic beverages. Well, look, thank you very much for the opportunity to chat with y'all. Look, we take our obligations to the media very seriously. I enjoy the back and forth. George and his communication staff are people who I now believe over the last 4 years have demonstrated that they're among the best in sports. And my hat's off to you and Mike and Jelaine and our other social media partners. But I just want to say thanks for being in the game. All right, guys. Thank y'all. Hey, how you doing?
I just want to say thanks again to our hosts and to everyone who came by and was waiting and everything else. Grab some food and hopefully talk a little bit and sit down a lot. Enjoy yourself. If you have any questions about the game access tomorrow, for those interested,